everyone. This is Kevin, and this is Plot Armor. We're finally at Plot Armor for Unknown Treasures.
We all made it out alive.
Somehow. Just in case you
maybe
started here and didn't know where else. Plot Armor is our
Come on.
into the game, into the book, I guess, kind of overall review of what we did during the game. This was a little different because I was a GM, a first time ever GM, and I'll actually tell you what was in the book and what wasn't. So that'll be, I think it's a fun aspect of this Plot Armor. The other thing is that this Plot Armor is
that applause for you, Kev.
Is a little overdue, and I'm so sorry.
Overdue how, Kev?
Yeah, what are you talking about? It all went in a good thing.
Well, I think my conservative estimate of how long this podcast would take was 13 episodes. And this is after episode 53. So we're 40 episodes over my estimate. 40.
Kev, I don't think you need to apologize or anything because, again, we are driving the story. So you don't need to just be like, hey, you keep going.
Well, this is a topic I've had conversations about was like when I was younger and wasn't making much money, like whenever I had a video game, I was like, man, I would buy a $60 video game. That took me like 4.5 hours to afford or whatever whatever the amount was, 10 hours, but I get 80 hours out of it. And I was like, man, that was cost effective to buy that video game and play it. So if you're listening to our podcast, I know it costs nothing to you, but I stretched that game out so long that it was worth it. That's how I'm looking at it. But I think it's fun to talk about. So like we're playing through Threefold Conspiracy on our main game, and at one point John and I started talking about like I want to run a game. I've never run a game before, and I think it'd be fun for me to try and record it. And we came up with this idea, but we also came up with the idea like, well, what if we pull a side character and we make this game about a side character? And that character we decided to come with was Rolu. Which Rolu was a character from Kelly. Kelly, you just tell us a little bit how, like, when you were writing the intro to the first episode of We'll Save the Podcast.
Woo! I hate to disappoint you again because we talked about it a little bit once, literally I was writing Here's a story and I was like, Here's sort of needs like a motivation to do X, Y, or Z. And he also needs something given to him for his story. So I was like, I can accomplish this in these two things with one person. And then I created Rolu, whose name actually, this is how much thought I put into Rolu originally. His name, like, I don't know why I was thinking of those, like, there's these, like, little disc candies that are named Rolos or something. And for some reason, that, like,
I love Rolos.
Like, made me think. Yeah, that.
Caramel-filled
This is how much
chocolate.
I thought about Rolu.
Yeah. Rolo's dope. That was actually the name of my Roomba for a hot minute because it looks like a Rolo candy.
Now you got to call him Rolu for sure. But, like, yeah, so then I just made him this brawny, kind dude. And I just needed him to die, and I needed him to give Here's a puck.
Well, he died. He died well.
He did die very well. It was
spoiler alert. If you haven't listened to We'll Save the Podcast, Rolu dies. We know that.
Sorry.
In fact, Rolu knew that because Rolu is a precog, and he was able to see that in his mind's eye. Whew. And apparently there's something to do with the veil, and that's how we ended our last episode. There was the veil and a character that only Kelly and I knew of named the Narrator. That is literally the title we gave him because I love that title so much. But we'll talk about it at the very end. You got to stick around. But what I want to do for this Plot Armor, since I'm running the show, I'm still kind of the GM, right?
Dude.
I want to take us all the way back to the very beginning. The very, very beginning.
Until you die or we find somebody better.
Yeah.
Wow. Which was going to be something that we were going to incorporate.
It was
that phrase from Starship Troopers, but it never happened. Sorry, that was just me being funny.
It was in the script, but you guys threw the script out the window. We'll talk about that later. Yeah. But
wow, all right.
Okay, so rewinding all the way back to the very beginning of the show, we are at low power, right? So our characters are it starts at level 1. This book. Junker's Delight is a fantastic book written by Jason Keeley. Again, thank you for joining us on the show. He joins us at the very end. It's written for new GMs. It's great. It has all these side comments and notes that tell you like, hey, it's your first time GMing. So like make sure you tell this. One of them was like, hey, double check radiation rules before you go into this combat, which I missed. Some other fun stuff like that. But one thing I want to note is like Rolu, when we dropped him into this game, Rolu starts off at level 1, but like he's not weak, if that makes sense. He is a seasoned pirate that's been out in space for 20 years probably at this point. But he's coming into this game as only level 1, and I think that I just wanted to scale that idea. Like we, as this podcast, I don't think we've ever reached above level 5. Just an idea there is level scaling.
What about?
What are you trying to say?
Well, I want to add something to the Rolu thing. One, I did develop one part of his character only, really, that John has done very well at, which is he's a master of espionage. Like, he is very capable of doing great evil. And maybe the viewer might have differing opinions on whether he's good or bad or how well he uses those. But I was just impressed to see John flesh him out so well.
And I love John's portrayal of him.
Yeah.
Like the gentleman pirate.
I think I got a little too close to the sun, maybe a method actor, because now I just feel like I know Rolo's mannerisms and motivations, that even when I'm improving lines, I will say something, and then later I'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, that was cool. And then, as we'll see, some of you are like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I literally thought I was just doing something normal, but I'm just, if I'm in a Rolo mood, I'm just sus. That's it.
If you think about the beginning of Threefold, like very first book, you opened with vignettes on each of the characters, right? And I feel like this entire adventure has informed here's his vignettes so much.
Right. And that was the plan. This is a story about Rolu, but it's a story about Rolu's connection to Hears and what.
Yeah.
And we talk about that. We'll get into that a little bit later too. And I think along with that is Hears is a former free captain. So what I chose to do for this run, this very short run, was to put 4 pirates on Akitan and let them run through Junker's Delight. I went to each of you and said, hey, you guys are going to build pirates. Here's the idea, like blah, blah, blah. And it's funny because I think with Terme, I was trying to do something clever and like I was like, oh yeah, this is, Will, tell us about your character. And the captain speaks and you guys were all supposed to go, wow, he's the captain, but that wasn't it. But it's funny because Will doesn't take anything as just a short.
What? I don't know what you
There
mean by
are no throwaways with Will.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know
Will
what
just
that
rubs his
really
hands
even
together.
means.
He's like, yeah.
And so Goldhorn is just so larger than life. He's so developed and so amazing. I want to see more of Goldhorn, and that's on John's shoulders there.
That is true. That would be amazing to see. I love Goldhorn. I wish we got to see more of him, in fact. I would love to serve under a captain like him. It's super cool.
Would be fun.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the noir.
Mm-hmm.
They're a complicated species, race, however you slice it. That's quite interesting, and it seems perfect for a captain. So it flowed naturally just from the rich Starfinder exposition of both the lore as well as the like sort of traits that different species come with. Yeah, I thought like Goldhorn was just like a very menacing, foreboding kind of figure in space.
No,
I agree.
He was perfect.
Fueled by this sort of like beastly sort of drive.
The atmosphere of every scene he's in is incredible. Like the steam or smoke coming off of him, the glow of his eyes, I think it is, if I'm not.
It's got like bright pink eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always like very often set in like a dark room. It's like that is the most memorable
Cold.
imagery to me of a character in UT is for sure Goldhorn.
Well, he's like in a meat locker because he likes it cold, so there's just steam rising off of him at all times. Like he was amazing, and he was such an amazing addition to the Caduceus, which was also I tossed it as an assignment to Vinny. I was like, Vinny, make me a ship. That's all I told him. Make me a ship. And you came up with this amazing, development, and that turns into like a life form of its own because the Caduceus is and the living, breathing, amalgamation of all you guys and your crew and, piracy in general. But
Yeah.
it was beautiful.
So like from concept, like I wanted Caduceus to have an underlying meaning, not just a cool name. So like if thinking through what we might use for symbolism turns to Greek mythology. So like I think it was Hermes. I'm going to Google this because I don't want to screw this up.
Layman call it Hermes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hermes. So Hermes was the Greek god of basically piracy, but I didn't want to go straight there. So I was trying to figure out symbols that might be related to Hermes, and his staff kept coming up. The caduceus, the staff, most people would associate with like medical assistance. So like healing, as well as, doctors and rehabilitation. So I think it's actually, in hindsight, been really interesting to see how Rolu's image has gone from this of such a treasonous character to like he's actually got his reasons, and it makes perfect sense.
It's so telling. It's crazy. It's so interesting. Like it's almost like I always say, like the dice rolls tell the story, but like we didn't intend for all these things to happen. Again, this was supposed to be a throwaway side session about Rolu giving a stone to Hears.
Throwaway?
That's at least when I first started talking about it. That's what it was. And it's
That's what you
developed
wanted
into
it to be.
so much more than that. You guys just take things so far and so deep. No,
It's like it's an interstellar tale from the Extragalactic Adventure Anthology.
and I love it. I love
And it
all
was
four of your
unknown.
characters.
To you.
And it was unknown.
And it might have been called a treasure to some.
Kelly, what was the real treasure along the way?
It was the puck. It was the
Who
puck the
knows
whole
even,
time.
man? Like,
Yeah.
it was the puck. I mean,
And-
actually,
I mean, the real-
yeah. What the fuck, Kevin? Wait, is there more to it than the puck? Because there was no treasure for
Thaddeus. There was no
The real treasure is Jack's crotch.
That's
That's
right.
exactly
It's
true.
still
Jack's copies.
that's actually how he ended the episode, was just like zooming in on his crotch. Yeah.
It's just like glows, like
It starts subtly glowing blue.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god.
yeah, like I don't really know. I mean, maybe knowing who for Thaddeus, it's like knowing who you're sticking to your commitments. I guess all of you, who didn't do that. That's the only thing really Thaddeus learned, I think. And besides, confirming
I
the
stuck
rules
to my
Curtis
commitment.
Hassel from his perspective.
I have a lot to say about the end of the show and Thaddeus, but we'll get there.
Fair enough. You technically fulfilled your commitments, although that's a clause I wasn't aware about of the free captains. It's kind of weird. Not gonna lie. You could just leave the crew when you're on land.
That's what it says. For my sake, I posted the tenets of the free captains all over the place. It was on each one of your guys' notes. I put it several times in the chat. I put it all over the place so you knew what the free captain tenets are.
Right.
I even had Will read them out for us.
You know what's funny, Kev?
As Terme, I think.
I also mentioned that there was another cargo bay. Like I said it.
That's a lie.
That
was a
it
lie.
was like
That was a lie.
I said that there's another, and then it's just crazy how things happen. You're like, oh whoa.
It always gets back to that other cargo bay.
Yeah, I still need that T-shirt.
Yeah.
The other cargo bay.
That'll be in our merch for sure. We'll have the other cargo. We should have that.
Yeah.
All right, so moving forward, we have the ship, we have the captain, now we have the crew, and I started that first episode with you guys each telling me, I introduced each of you, and you told a little bit about yourselves. We have Rolu, who is the chief of the boat, the Cobb, and who's a new Cobb to the boat. And then we have Thaddeus, who's the weapons officer. Chalk is still not a title for Chalk. He is kind of just the captain's plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Formerly.
He's
Formerly Captain's Plant.
formerly.
And then we have Terme, who's the yeoman officer, the person in charge of personnel, essentially. Those, again, I pulled all those titles from my experience on a submarine, and I was using it. The life aboard the Caduceus was a submarine, and you guys made fun
Life
of me for all my
informs art.
right. But I had you guys just basically dropped off. I was like, okay, the four of you are sent on a mission by the captain, given 3 words, and I don't have those written down right here, but it was basically find Dotrulu, or kill Dotrulu, find the riddle, and draw him out. So using the riddle, you can draw out Dotrulu. And I drop you into Kafak Depot. And actually, I dropped you guys into Morrow and made you drive into Kafak Depot because nothing can fly in Kafak Depot.
Why is that?
Allegedly.
I made that up.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, for real. For his own convenience.
Right.
Cool.
You wanted us to be on a bus.
Right. I wanted you to be on a bus. I didn't like the idea
like
of you
it.
able to fly around. I just wanted something to be. There was something going on in Kafak Depot that prevented things from flying.
Just want to make our experience as uncomfortable as possible. But yeah.
Part of it was that it got resolved in the end. That very last scene was Thaddeus watching a ship
You
take
jumping?
off.
You jumping?
I'm jumping.
We'll get there.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was a rocket taking off, so I wanted to resolve that. So there was something holding everything down, and now it's released. What that was, well, that's open to interpretation. So you guys are dropped off in Morrow. You're bussed into Kafak Depot. When you get to Kafak Depot, the book is very open-ended. It's just like, hey, let them explore the town. And I was like, no, that. I'm a first-time GM. You guys aren't exploring. And yet you still got fixated on the water dealer. And I had to make a bunch of on the spot. Thank you guys for doing that kind of stuff. But I finally was able to redirect you guys back to the riddle after I introduced you to the arena and I showed
Okay.
Hrog.
If I might, as a player, like if you drop me into the desert and give me a character called the water dealer
Yeah.
and ask me to pretend he's not a big deal, like that has
it's
to
not.
be.
I think
like,
they are
no, that has Big Bad
non-binary.
Evil Guy written all over it.
It's
I
not.
almost asked Merc and Kesh that at the end. You're like, hey, by the way,
Where's this
is that
water
dealer
dealer?
Yeah.
Let me put that to the camera for you guys.
That's the water dealer?
That's the water dealer.
That's
Beautiful artwork. I'd have to look up exactly who that drew that because it doesn't say on this page.
But like, are they a nefarious character?
They
Or just like-
they live in the desert and they control all of the water in Kafak Depot. So think about that. Like
Sure.
you live in a waterless region, and water is life, and so they control that. Whether or not they're nefarious is to be told by the story. And I wasn't ready to go there. They had nothing to do with this adventure, so I didn't want to let you guys go down that route, and I had to
It's a
very
red
quickly
herring.
redivert you. I finally told you about the riddle, and turns out the riddle is not it wasn't a question. It wasn't some kind of trick. Riddle is a rat, a Yosoki, a character. And that's actually how the book starts, is Riddle is being beaten up in an alleyway, and you guys save
that's
her.
right.
That's how the book starts. That's how I ran it.
I love it.
Lots of conversations about how much cover is provided by a vehicle in narrow alleyways.
Yeah, and how fast a vehicle can move in one action.
Yeah, wasn't there something about how like the vehicle just pulled up and then everybody just basically ran towards it?
And,
Span of, like, 1 second.
and then it pulled away.
All in like the course.
Just some hand wavy, like,
Yeah,
oh no, speed doesn't matter here.
We were like
Yeah, no, it's fine.
3 episodes in at that point, I think, and you guys were like, "That's not how GMing works." And I'm like, "I don't know." in the book, it doesn't, like, the game doesn't have the car there. It just mentions the car. It says like they run down the alleyway, and I wanted it to be more intense, so I put the car a little closer and actually dropped it on the map. And
It was great.
yeah,
Yeah, it was funny. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I enjoyed you
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
getting really
that was good.
angry about the fact that we were complaining about it.
right.
It's really funny.
Thank you, Adam. He's coming up late on the game, and he's going back and reading, and he's telling me that I was right in a lot of things. This is the way I got his messages.
okay.
Thank you,
Wow,
Adam from
that's
STF.
awesome.
No,
I
but
like that for you, man.
I think for the most part, my goal was initially like, I'm going to stick to this book. I'm a new GM. I don't know anything. I'm going to like play the book out by the book. But I was like, no, I want to throw in a little bit of flair. I want to make it my own. And that was the start of it. I added a car. And when I had to get people in the car, I had to skip some rules and throw people in the car anyways.
And props to you for doing that. That was cool. Like, it's really hard to just take a book and be like, I'm going to do it exactly as it is. I'm not going to change anything.
It's
and
hard.
you were like, that's what I'm going to do. But then you found something. And then, like, your brain was like, I like that. That's cool. And you changed it.
I gotta say, Kevin, like I enjoyed that. It's good that you did a lot of things that were kind of adding your own flavor, whether it's like new characters, new mobs, annoyingly, and then like, but all this stuff. It's a lot to do, I imagine, for your first time as a GM to like add extra. That's kind of cool.
It was a lot more than I expected on some scenes, and I'm thankful again for our paralegals and Finder and Adam were really helpful because they were like willing to open Junker's Delight and give me insight on like, hey, I'm having a problem with this scene. They're like, what page of the book? And would really like walk me through it. But I still I put myself down some dark alleyways a couple of times, but
That's part of it. You found your way out.
yeah, and it was also tricky because I think the book kind of gives like 3 different options for how characters get dropped into this venture, and you guys didn't necessarily fit into any of them.
Is that
And so
because we were
guess
pirates, or
I'd have to look up exactly what the 3 options were.
I thought we would do a lot more piracy when you came to us and were like, we need to make a pirate crew.
Yeah.
I thought we
Yeah.
would be sailing on ships, taking some booty.
I agree with that. The thing is, like, yeah, you know, like Goldhorn probably did some piracy to get his initial control over this place, and we were like
Right.
his crew that went in and fixed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and I was
off track.
honestly I was leaving that super vague so that John could fill in the gaps if he wanted to. But I have this idea for who Goldhorn is, and we'll see where that goes. The book has 3 different types. There's discount treasure seekers, there are friends of the family, and there are looking for steady work. So the idea is that there's low level characters. The first one is like, hey, we're just going to go look for some treasure, and the junkyards of Kafak Depot is a great place to do that. The other one is like a friend of the family told you, hey, I need you to go look for this for my sake, which I think that's the one you guys fit into the most, the friend of the family being the captain. And the last one was just looking for steady work, where going to Kafak Depot, there might be something for you to do.
Yeah, I could see why we don't drop in any of those super cleanly. Kevin, was there in the story an actual treasure that's written in that because we're coming from a different direction we didn't find?
The treasure
Or is it the drift thing? Yeah.
Oh, spoiler alerts! If you're listening to this and
Oh,
you've never run
yeah.
or played Junker's Delight, stop now before I tell you how this goes. But yes, in the book, it really goes by Vari. Vari 13 is looking for information about the drift drive, and that drift drive exists, and it's on that ship. So we'll get to that later on about how the book diverts from, or how I diverted from the book. So,
Okay. Yeah, I'd love
cool. So at this point, you guys fought off the True Warriors once. You saved Vari 13. Or sorry, you saved Riddle. Riddle tells you about Vari 13 and says like, "Hey, she's been missing." Logan, is that who he said his name was? I forget.
Lorgan.
Lorgan. It was Morgan with an L.
Lorgan.
Not
Morgan.
Throwback.
Lorgan.
Lorgan, rest in peace, was made up by me. So in the book, yeah, again, we followed the book at that point, and you guys got into another fight with the True Warriors in the alleyway, and that was pretty by the book until they ran away and got into the car. That was me using my GM powers. And then you guys headed out to the car yards.
Kayaks.
Yeah, the car yards. Getting into the car yards, it does talk about the guy with the Kafak dogs at the front.
Yeah.
And it says like he's basically an informant for the True Warriors. That first Kafak fight,
Before we hop into that, can I ask about the choice to reveal to us as players
Yes, please do.
things that
That's
we
what
didn't
I'm wondering
observe?
too. Yeah, this is crazy, Kevin. Go ahead, Vinny.
Because like I found it really interesting because I as a player, like it was the first time I've experienced it where like something that my player character didn't see was revealed off screen to me as the player.
like what? What do you
It's like
what-
we moved on from the Kafak dog dude
And
into
then-
the junkyards, and then you were very explicitly had a vignette of him like pulling out his device to communicate to the True Warriors.
Exactly.
Hey, this is what's going on, but we aren't supposed to know about that.
I mean, I'm a first time GM, so I don't know what the
Yeah.
norm is for GMing,
There's
but
no
like,
harm. It's whatever you want.
right.
Right.
I was looking at this
Depends
as
on
like
the
a
game you want to play.
right, and I was kind of playing this from like a movie perspective. From what I understand of filmography and stuff, and so it's like, yeah, you guys, the scene happens, we follow the characters away, but we're gonna cut back to this detail. Was kind of how I played that scene.
I like it. Kelly?
Yeah, I played.
Isn't there some discussion on like the fact that we all like rolled really, really high like sense motive and other things like that? And then I think we also might have done a check on the person. I can't remember, but there were a lot of things we did. And you're like, oh man, you guys
Right.
missed all of those rolls. And then,
Right,
and
all of us thought he was shady.
He was.
And
there's
you're
a
like,
reason
no,
this
everything's
character
above board, man. Everything's
exists.
fine. Yeah, you're good.
That's not exactly what I said. He was being straightforward with you that he's. I forget exactly how it goes. I'll have to go listen to the episode again.
To the point where
His
when we-
actual occupation was selling Kafak dogs,
Right.
which is true.
Yeah.
He's also an informant for the True Warriors.
Which we were specifically like, I wonder if he's an informant for the True Warriors, and then I think we rolled to that end, and then
you didn't roll high enough. I just
it was so high.
I'm a first time GM, man. I set that appropriately to what I thought was right.
Hey,
that DC had 3 digits.
DC 45 for a kafak dealer.
Hey, man. Hey.
Turns out that was actually Dotrulu and using disguise.
Just Dotrulu with a mustache. That was
It's like a transformer. That's fine.
All right. I'm sorry if I misled you at all with that scene.
No, it was funny. I mean,
It's all right.
It was
so
a
good.
curious choice from my perspective. Like I don't know. I've never been like, this is this thing that you now know, but your character doesn't. Good luck.
I like that idea of it. I think that's a real, like, it's a hard line to draw, but like that's what I try to do, especially with Rick, where it's like Kevin might know this. And I was actually I told John this like in a message recently. We've had a full year because this game took so long. I'm sorry. We had a full year to think about Threefold Conspiracy, and I was like, hey, I'm letting you know now, Rick trusts the stewards on that ship, but Kevin is super skeptical. Kevin doesn't trust anybody. And this game, like, Threefold Conspiracy f***ed me up. I'm just going to say that. All right. So moving on from the Kafak dog guy. I'm sorry about that. We get into the first fight with Kafaks. I was like, these Kafaks are too easy, man. They're only like six points of life. I was like, this fight's going to be nothing.
right.
Yeah. I actually,
This is the fight that never ends.
And actually, I wrote out the equation for it. It is the number of enemies. The total number of enemies is equal to the enemies that are written into the book plus 1 plus number of rounds divided by 3 minus the number of enemies killed, because you have to account for that. So basically, every third round, I added in a new Kafak, and I added 1 extra in the beginning.
That makes sense.
Just because I thought they were too easy, and honestly, you guys didn't have a hard time with them. It was just a matter of getting rid of them and moving on.
It was more the emotional stress of not knowing how many more were going to show up.
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it worked. It did what I wanted.
All right.
Right.
Yeah. That was
And
good.
then they turned out to be easy. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I love that in the end there was like a swarm of them chasing you out, but we'll get to that later on. So you guys work your way through the car yards, you kill the Kafaks, you go digging through, you get up, there's that trap that you guys avoid the first time. You get up, fight some more Kafaks at the ziggurats at the top, which are actually nests, and then you move around that corner. And you at one point you found a dead body. I introduced all those extra footprints, all of that stuff was mine. And no complaints to Jason Keeley, but in the game, the way it's written, the True Warriors are kind of a threat at the beginning, and then they kind of disappear for majority of the game. And I thought they just had to be more
present.
Yeah, more present. And so I was like, I'm going to put footprints in there. I dropped dead bodies. I made sure you guys spent a lot of times like investigating that scene and trying to figure it out. And I wanted to make sure that it showed Vari 13 was with Lorgan on his way up and around, but they're being chased by True Warriors. And so you guys figured all that out and worked your way around. And then you came up on that desert sea, the ocean of sand.
Yeah. And I just have to roll back to that. That I think is a great choice. I think it's important to connect and tie things together that happened in the beginning. And also with the style, with the way that we play. We like the small details that then matter. Like that's how we're going to look at a scene, because then it helps drive a lot of other conversations. Yeah. So I think that was awesome. That was a great choice.
A little bit more of it too is that like your guys' motivations for wiring game. We talked about how like the 4 of you being pirates in this game, your job was to kill the True Warriors leader. Where the other written story arcs are not
necessarily
quite as intense. Yeah. So it is the True Warriors are more of a nuisance to them. Where for you guys, you needed to know that what you were doing was drawing them out the entire time. And I thought that was important. So I wanted to just reinforce that. Like, oh no, you're being watched. They are following you. Like they have you in their sights, and you're like working on pulling them out from, the shadows. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah. We always talk about like, what's your motivation in this scene, and staying reminded of that. It's important.
Yeah. This is a big fail on my part, but so the Kafak fight, for everything it was. The
Thaster Kafak.
The Thasteron Kafak, yeah. It was a mutant Kafak that was actually only one. It wasn't a large creature because it only takes up 5 foot square. It was a normal, medium-sized creature because the other Kafaks are tiny, I think, or whatever, small. But I was like, I wanted to make that introduction a mini game. The idea was that you guys were playing like almost like a battleship type.
Oh yeah.
You move across the desert and like the square that was going to hit was moving, but my rolls took the Kafak like up and to the left the entire time. And I was so mad about it. And I was just like, all right, they had to tax you, whatever. So there was that. The radiation, I'm so mad at myself for, and I'm sorry you guys had to deal with that.
You did great.
It's okay. It was fine.
Yeah, dude.
What exactly happened again? Could you give us a summary of that? Like, the radiation rules were not accounted for, basically, right? Or they were not accounted for properly.
It was basically that environmental protection saves you from radiation, low level radiation. And,
Right.
and all but one of you had that on, but it gave us such a hard time that first time we went through the fight that we basically just stopped the game and we're like, okay, next time we record, we're going to like read this better. And we did. Right.
We had a conversation. We almost re-recorded it. It was a big conversation that we had. And we're like, no.
It almost killed Terme.
Yeah.
We were all trying to figure out how to get in to rescue him. We were trying to figure out how to kill this without getting radiation. And then we find out that, probably 80% through the battle that environmental protections would have saved us the whole time. So like, do we re-roll it or do we, show the community that, hey, we are indeed fallible? I mean, we're learning this game. We're learning this game just like you guys are.
The community, like, they're so used to us being completely infallible. So then we were like,
It's like half of the messages on Wednesdays and Thursdays are.
Yeah,
well, and speaking of that, they turn around and
Mistakes channel is very populated with messages.
It's lit on a regular
Right.
basis.
To those who might not join us on Discord, we have an entire channel dedicated to rules we
and
fuck
mistakes.
up in this game.
Yeah.
Well, and that channel was lit up that day because we were talking about how Terme was down and the radiation starts you take damage from radiation on the start of your turn, but then it's like, when can you use resolve and to stabilize and recover? And so will the radiation kill him because he still has a sickness, but he's still in the radiation area? And there was all this debate, and I still don't know where I stand on that. I got to go and review it. But like, delay is not an action. Nowhere in the book does it say it's an action. I'm just gonna say that.
We were like,
Well,
I remember
that was
this
delaying
now.
when you're unconscious.
Right. So it's like,
I don't. That's the difference. Is
it was a big
per
debate.
GM
I
and
think
per
it's-
player. Like,
Right.
What
That's
do
a
you,
GM ruling.
It's a GM ruling.
I
And
think it's
your
still
game.
up for
So
debate.
there
That's
it
all
is.
I'm saying.
Is it okay? All right.
we decided we're gonna like keep going with this and release it and just like fix the next episode and like comment on it because like we want to re-recording it we might have lost some of our energy and we don't want it to be fake, so we want to like put forward a genuine thing anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, we genuinely fucked up that rule.
We did genuinely. But, yeah.
Don't worry, there's lots more of that in the future.
Yeah, and like, like I remember messing up the robot fight in book 2, and not realizing that y'all did like 3 critical hits. And I was like, oh, that's right, it's vulnerable to critical hits. This could have been over a lot longer. And then I think in the next episode, I was like, you take away your damage, and you take away your damage because. Like that's who we are. We'd rather be transparent about the rules and what we're messing up, and like you're at the table with us rather than like
Kind of like the DR on the Drift Phantom later on, but
Yeah, we'll get there.
yeah. Okay, so back to that desert scene. So you guys kill the Kafak, you find the tanker, and there is Vari 13 inside that tanker. All of the flashbacks that Vari has, those are mine. I'll admit that.
Awesome.
I wrote all
They're
those
fantastic.
myself.
They're like your flashbacks, like you were actually on that shit.
Right. I was
'cause
an
you're a murderbot.
alien android. Yes. No, I wrote them is what I meant.
because you're Rick 19
Yeah.
and Rick 8.
In real life, you are
In real life.
actually a murder bot.
Rick 8 was in the
Starfinder.
Navy. Rick 19 is just this iteration.
That's not how that
Yeah,
works.
that's right. That's right.
That makes sense to me.
But so my idea with that, and this is kind of just jumping ahead, with all of the cutscenes was the idea that Vari 8 had the puck, and for whatever reason, still not quite revealed, a gray came onto the stellar flare and tried to get that puck from them, and in the process, the ship was destroyed. Vari 8 was able to put the puck in one escape pod, launch it, and then they launched out a separate escape pod and were knocked unconscious and then struck and killed. And that's what caused the dead body to then be slowly over time turned into Vari 13. Because Vari 8 was the 8th soul to inhabit that body, and Vari 13 is now the 13th soul. And Vari 13 is having these flashbacks every time they have a life-threatening situation. I kind of had that whole story kind of figured out and written, and then I just chopped it up and put it in appropriately at different scenes. So that's where I introduced that. And then, and then you guys managed to avoid another trap, that same trap, when Vari 13 was supposed to be right on your tail, and you guys avoided that somehow. And that's when I was
By
like,
being smart and like
yeah,
not
by
falling
being
into your
too
coding.
smart. That's the problem. Yeah. And so I was like, well, what about the
Is there
Kafox?
such
The
a thing?
Kafox are coming.
Was that also when Rolu, you put in that thing that only Rolu would take damage from just trying to squeeze into a small space? Was that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's totally Kevin's fault.
I don't
Yeah,
recall.
no, yeah.
I don't recall this. What is it?
It's
That's
absolutely
convenient,
Kevin's
yeah.
fault that Rolu
That's
only rolled a 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rolu-
no, that's Kev's fault.
I'm not
There
even
was
sure
so
what you
much of
guys are
this game.
referring to.
Rolu
So-
It's like a-
multiple times would squeeze through small spaces and get fucked. Like
There was this
Yeah.
one area by the west of the ziggurats that
Yes.
was
Where you guys got like slashed
junk.
and cut up.
yeah.
Yeah.
No. Rolu.
Well, not
only
you
got
guys,
slashed.
just Rolu.
Just me. Yeah.
Because everyone else rolled at least like an 18. And
On
Rolu
the
rolled a
athletics check
2.
or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your classic ARD, your anti-Rolu device. That's
And
what it is.
I don't think I messed with the traps too much. I left the traps as is because traps in Starfinder are
Brutally
ridiculous
awesome. Yeah.
and complicated. So I was like, I'm just
As we found out once we got into the Stellar Flare, yeah.
yeah,
It's fine. Yeah.
Like,
So we
Rolu-
got past the catchphrase. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, dude, there were multiple times where Rolu was squeezing through things, and it just didn't work out for him. Like every time, it was really sad.
Yeah, well, the one time that I needed it to was when I squeezed through the conversation to convince people. So it worked out.
it works.
Yeah. Good
To set
lord.
your own trap.
Okay, I have to make this comment here. I was hoping to save it for the end, but like I still don't know. We have finished the adventure. Like done, tied up, buttoned, it's over. I still don't know if Chuck got screwed by Roller or not.
I don't think you will know. It's something that's for book 3 to tell us at some point, hopefully.
I guess.
Maybe.
Or maybe
Maybe a different companion.
yeah.
Yeah.
These are the things that will haunt my memories. Anyway, Roller squeezing through trash gets sliced up.
As Kelly, like I'm happy that things ended the way that they did. But like,
Let's talk
half
about
of
the
me
end
is
at the
sad.
end. Let's get
All right,
there.
Sorry. All right.
You're the guys who keep bringing it up.
I know. It's hard because like the end was so amazing.
I like the ending.
It's fresh. So, like,
That
if we
was
can
my
pull
bad.
the curtain back,
Yeah.
we recorded the end today.
Today, and we were like, we got to
Today.
record plot armor now, and we're like, well,
Yes.
let's take an hour. And then
All right, but back to the this for me was one of the first times where I was like, I mean, I was loving playing this campaign and being like, oh, I'm a player for the first time in Starfinder. This is awesome. This group is great. And then there was just something about the end of this act with like us leaving that really just like cemented for me us as a group on this mission. Like it made it real in my mind.
And what do you mean when you left this? Because the book just says like, hey, on their way out of the car yards, check that trap. If they didn't trip it, you could try to catch them in it again. And that's it. That's all the book says. And
You
I
mean
was,
the Kafak trap?
Yeah, no, the bridge over the oil. And I was trying to catch you guys in it, and you still managed to get by it. So that's when you guys, like, the Kafox are chasing you. That's not a part of the book. And you guys, like, set the C4 and blew up the bridge and all that craziness. And it was just like, boom.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
Like,
So, like, I distinctly remember, like, when I added those breaching charges to Chalk's inventory, I was like, this is going to be some tomfoolery. Like, this, I'm going to be on some bullshit when I actually use this.
It worked. It was so good. I was just like, man, I don't know what the f***'s going on. Go ahead, roll something. Roll
It was
for
just it was the magic of the moment. Like, because it was at that point too that like Thaddeus and like Terme, there's the personal conflict between players, and then Chalk, like that I think was one of your first times of just chalking it up and just being like, I have these bracing charges, you know, and you're like, I'm gonna throw, and like the magic of Kev of like putting in the Kafox chasing us, like the tension, it was glorious. Like
we really
it's
worked
why we
together
play.
in that moment. We really did, like, because like
We
in
did.
spite of the conflict, we're like, all right, cool, let's kick it into gear. You could see how the crew of the Caduceus, this
Right.
like
Get
18 that was
stuff
sent down,
done.
knows how to get
Exactly.
things done and be a
Get stuff
cohesive
done.
unit. Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Speaking of conflict, this is when we started introducing the Thaddeus Rolu conflict. It was Thaddeus was suspicious of Rolu, and so he had Terme get some information about Rolu's messages, and we started pulling that data. And then, so Terme had like an insight of what was going on. You weren't quite, I don't know, leaning either way, right? Will,
Yeah.
even as a player, you just didn't know what was happening.
Well, I mean, behind the scenes, John and Kelly were plotting with Kevin this entire time. Not to my knowledge, really. Still, I don't know the extent to which they have plotted.
Or are still plotting.
But I was trying to
Right.
think.
We
of
took
like,
an hour break. That could have been a meeting. We don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
a full on conversation. No, and that's a part of like how this was set up was like we know it's about Here's, and then we wanted to make Rolu suspicious and like lead into that. So we were talking about that, and it's fun because like John and I have had a lot of conversations about like I want to do this, and he's like, and I want to do that, but we can't talk to each other about it because we don't want to spoil the in-game stuff for either person. So it's been a lot of coded messages between each other about
true.
right, because he's the GM of the main game, and I'm like, well, what about this part? He's like, I can't tell you that. I still
I'm
don't know what the fuck
planning-
is. I don't know what the fuck that thing does.
I'm planning to like I could share some things between Kevin and John, and some things only with John, some things only with Kevin. Yeah.
I just want to insert this comment because we're on Zoom and this is still an audio platform. John's game face over the last year has improved.
he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's just looking directly in the camera.
Stares.
No,
right into the camera.
As it
We
creeps
could
closer
be
and
like,
closer.
He's like zooming in. Scary stuff, man.
we could be knocking on the door of
Sus.
the threefold conspiracy. We could be not anywhere close, and none of us would have any idea.
right.
Yeah, dude, John's really good at keeping that stuff.
It's like blind
that.
golfing. You swing, and you're like, how
Golfing at
close
night.
am I? Hole in
Golf
one.
at night. Don't worry, there's plenty of scheming and side conversations for all of you to come in many things.
I think that was probably my favorite part about all of this was like the amount of creativity that I was able to inject into running this game for you guys. Like playing the game was super stressful for me. I'll be honest. I have like 14 screens open and I'm like trying to juggle stuff and the rules on one page and I got the storyline here and I got NPCs, but like
Yep.
all the prep
Pro
work.
tip: don't use Excel for initiative.
Yeah, well. I was also that's like it was where I put all my notes out. That way I wasn't juggling through the book for damage and stuff too. So it worked for what it was. Anyways, so out of the car yards, fantastic scene with blowing up the bridge, and then you guys had that conversation about the messages from Rolu and off the ship to Shira Dawnbreaker. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you guys ended up facing Tez Tronin for the first time.
That's right.
That was not in the book. I introduced that, and I wanted again.
Tez.
With the whole character wasn't even in the book.
No, Tez Tronin is. Tez Tronin is the person who was in the car in the first place. She's in the book there, and the next time she appears is at the very end when she comes into the Stellar
Stellar
Flare.
Fire.
But
Yeah.
that engagement was all homebrewed on your part.
Right, but I think you guys were looking for Dotrolu. That was your whole purpose, and so I wanted you guys to know that you guys were on
the trail.
their radar. Like for the second in command to come out is a big deal, and then you guys talked down Michael. Fuck you all.
So before we move on from Test Tronin, I think it's a really valuable mechanic that not enough GMs use. Drop in a
Sub-boss.
character, a sub boss, take a certain amount of damage, and then let them retreat and leave the ads to take care of things. Like I feel like the ominous nature of like they've experienced you and they know who you are and what you look like, and they can disseminate that information to the rest of the organization isn't nearly used as often as it should be.
And this is me being a novice, but I was like, why isn't that done? And so I was like, we need to introduce the bad guys sooner. And I had this whole thing written out, and I had all these rules. And then you guys turned around and like, you made her misfire, and then like you guys took her down so fast. And I was like, fuck, man. Like maybe I nerfed her too much for this scene that I was like, well, but I did have that trigger point. I always had the trigger point of she's going to do supernova, blind you guys for half a second. The rest of True Warriors disappear. And that's the end of that scene. That was the idea. Was like, I wasn't going to kill you guys. There was no plan to kill you at that point. Right. Then when you guys ended that so fast, I was like, I'm going to kill these guys.
But we didn't know. Right, that's the beautiful thing that, like, as a player, I'm trying to take back into GMing. It's like you don't know. Like, it was like maybe this is when we fight Tez, and then Tez got away, and we're all about to die, and then suddenly we're like, damn it! Like, I have to take Tez out now. Like, there's a real hatred for Tez, and it also works because the True Warriors is its own boss. Like, they are a villain, right? Like, they're just a villain with many faces. So then when you went through and were like, oh, so there's Dotrulu, you'll get there. Instead, there's this asshole who has it out for you and then blinds you and then leaves. And in the first confrontation, got was like in the car and then was like, yeah, nah, y'all are nothing. I'm gonna leave in the car.
I'm kind of mad because I like revealed the picture to you guys, and you were like, "Oh, she has a glowing hand. She's clearly a Solarian." I was like, "Fuck me." That was. I didn't mean
she had a fucking lightsaber, dude.
Right? I know.
Yeah,
she's a Solarian. But cool. So you guys make it out of the car yards. You go back. You report all that. You bring Vari 13 back to Riddle, and Riddle's very thankful for you. And then Vari 13 tells you, "Hey, this is what I'm really looking for," and you guys are skeptical. You're like, we don't really care what you're looking for. We're only here for Dotrulu. But I was slowly able to work you guys up and just convinced that if you followed whatever Vari 13 was looking for, that Dotrulu would come. And I think Will was probably the worst on it of like, why are we doing this? And I was
worst
like,
or best?
Here's the money. Just take some fucking money. That's all. And the book actually says like, just pay him. Just fucking pay him. I think the book actually is the only time the book cusses is right there. It says just fucking pay him.
Wait, who are we talking about? Snake Boy?
No. Vari 13.
Oh, right.
Trying to convince you to go to find the stellar flare with her.
Yep.
With them.
I was like, I don't care about a stellar flare.
Yeah.
Where's this Dotrulu dude?
It fits so well for Terme. Terme's like, okay, but on the accounting, like, this is why we're here, and you're paying us.
I have a
for
checklist.
Yeah, true.
Yep.
Yeah.
At which point Jack was like, ooh, new and shiny?
Yeah, that's great. And then, was that also when we met Snake Boy?
I think in that time I let you. Yeah, and that was all a mistake on my part.
Why?
What?
We got so many healing strands from
for letting you guys do anything. If I give you guys 1 inch and you're like, we're gonna take this to the moon.
But Snake Boy was so awesome.
Right.
Okay.
I love it.
Kev's definition of a mistake is us forcing him into roleplay.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. I just want to say, we all. It's a player favorite.
I had a fun time with that episode. I think so.
It's awesome.
Kevin.
What?
Oh, sorry.
No.
Kevin and John and whoever DMs in the future. I would not be opposed to kind of like in Final Fantasy how there's like a Moogle every now and again that you can buy things from. If Snake Boy just shows up throughout the universe.
Oh my god! All right.
Oh yes,
I really want that to happen. And Kevin has to play it.
You mean it's like the jacket guy from Resident Evil?
Yes. Please do.
Would you like to look at my wares or whatever he says?
He's also like
you're like a Khajiit.
The cabbage dealer from Avatar. You know, the cabbage dealer is just always in the way. Great.
Right. Snake Boy has wares if you have coin.
Yes.
There it is.
So, as I was saying.
I also have a note that is probably one of my favorite notes on our notes page, which is that in episode 19, it says call a hotel. And then in parentheses it says Thaddeus sucks at negotiating.
Yeah, it wasn't the best moment ever. All right. Y'all in the background, I should just let him do it. Interrupting him.
That was cool.
Yeah,
It was funny. It was funny.
We managed to get Shaq in for free, and stuff.
That's
like
true.
that. Yeah,
You snuck a plant in. Good. That's congrats. It's just a plant. So you guys took a rest out in town, and you guys got to purchase some stuff, and then you headed out into the outer junk fields. Is that where am I right
Hang
on
on.
that?
Before we get there, drunk folks show up to the wrong room.
Yeah.
Oh,
what was the
yeah.
point of that?
So, it was to raise attention and have you guys freak
John.
out. That was,
John knows the reason apparently.
No, I actually have been wanting to ask. I loved it. I like when you add
you were
in
ready to
suspense.
shoot through the door.
It was
And
great
then
flavor.
Well, like it reminded me of that scene from Fellowship of the Ring where the ring wraiths show up and like sword the beds in the
Yes.
wrong room.
Yes.
After Frodo has moved and like just
Oh shit!
What's the point?
so much tension. Like they are there with pitchforks and torches ready to handle some shit.
And then they stab the bed, and then Frodo sits up, and then you hear the ringwraith screaming because it was like further down the river.
I know
Yeah.
what hunts
Right?
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I'll be honest, I didn't have any kind
was
of
great,
plan
Kev. It was
for
great. It was
if
great.
I had no plan for you to fight them. There was always de-escalation. It was always just to build tension for a second and then take it away, just to get you guys off your like firm footing. But I think it worked.
Yeah.
out.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how firm our footing ever was, but yeah,
It always felt pretty sandy.
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
But
Benny, I'm going to boot you from this Zoom call.
you made your way into the outer junk fields, and
Yeah.
in the book, Vari doesn't join you. They are not a part of that adventure, and so I was like, well, I want Vari to come along because I need to give again those opportunities for those flashbacks, and so I started writing those in. Like, oh, they're going to trip here, and they're going to get attacked there, and they're going to do that. So I was like, oh, Vari's going to join until a certain point, which was hilarious when you guys were like, oh, you should come in the Stellar Flare with us, and I was like, no, please, no. But okay, one thing I do have to point out is that in that part 2, so there's 3 parts to this book, and in part 2 is the fetch missions. You go and find all of the components. I think in the book there are 5 places you can go. 4 of them are required because you need to get 4 components. I wrote those out. I was like, again, from my experience with you guys at the marketplace, I don't want to give you any more than you'll take. Because you'll take it all. And so I was like, I railroaded you. I railroaded you real hard. I'll be honest. And I'm sorry to the listener for that.
It didn't feel like it to me.
I walked you through 2 of the scenarios first, and then introduced you to Kesh and Merc, because Kesh and Merc were actually supposed to be introduced first.
Can we take a half step back?
Yeah.
Just thumbing through the notes on episode 21, where we find a hole with another Thaster Toad, and we pull the Mind Link circlet.
That's in the book.
It's in the book?
I'm pretty sure it's in the book.
I was really curious whether that was in the book or whether that was something that you added.
Let me pull up.
Because that Mind Link circlet, I feel like that changed how we handled the rest of the intrigue through the rest of the plot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Like the ability to communicate non-verbally is so valuable when you're trying to do espionage.
And we have communication devices, so you could still be at the like Junker's Delight, and like Rolu could call and be like, "Hey, this is what's going on." But this problem this is a problem that doesn't exist in sci-fi that does exist in fantasy, which is like in fantasy you can't just be like, "Hey, what's going on? How you doing?" and like text or do whatever, right? So then now the nonverbal to like communication is its
so much
own
more-
problem.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so much more important now.
Nope, it says right there. Treasures from that is if a character succeeds a 15% or DC 15 perception check, while at the bottom they find 4,000 UPBs and a Mind Link Circuit 1.
Yeah, that's right.
It says it straight out of the book.
Sweet.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you guys, you're right, because we even used that in the very, very last scene on the final episode.
I'm using it all the time.
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think I railroaded you a little bit. I walked you through the Thaster Toads. That's where I introduced another scene for Vari 13, and then I forget what the other one was. The Akeshtis, I think. I ran you guys through that one.
Found out they spit blood through their eyes.
That's
Yeah,
also
wow.
from the book. I did not make that up. I think Jason Keeley was very proud of that moment. He was the one that wrote that one in.
That's cool.
Also, I was gonna say that we almost came. Hold on a second. We almost developed a title called "Take My Whole Dusty Toads." That almost became an episode title. With,
It was so close, so good.
I forget what it ended up being. "Take Me Home, Dusty Toads" or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Titles are always fun.
what could have been? I guess
What could have been?
probably would not be a good
There's
idea.
there's a running gag that I have to have at least 2 drinks before I come up with a decent title.
Yeah.
Another thing with those Akeshtis when you ran into them, I gave them Magic Missile. They didn't have the ability for Magic Missile, but Terme, being a witch word, has this super cool ability to catch f***ing magic missiles. And I was like, I gotta give Will the opportunity to at least pull it out. So
That we
That's
only
very
played
good.
correctly like once.
right, we f*** it up every time. But I just thought it was just a cool scene for them to shoot a magic missile at you. I only give them
Loved it.
one each, I think. But yeah,
Catch it.
And then the goblins. So Merc and Kesh, you guys met them, and then you guys were given basically these fetch quests to gather all the components to make an EMP key that would help you get into the Stellar Flare. Which again, you guys had a hard time of like, why are we going after the Stellar Flare? Like, what's the point? But the point was to find something lucrative enough to draw out the true warriors, and you finally did go that route. I guided you. I said there was basically 3 places to go. You had to get, I think, the Akeshtis, the goblins, and then there was where the junk golem was. And then there was 1/4 area that was where Zethel Red's camp was.
So before we go out on the fetch quest, that was an interesting point where after fighting those 2 Akeshti, the trying to solve things diplomatically was proven unsuccessful. Like, I'm going to lay down all my weapons and we'll see if we can, maybe exchange some information. And he was like, no, I'm getting out of here. Peace. It was interesting to establish different factions within the world, right? Because you had established the true warriors as the local gangsters. But I feel like it was coming out of that space that we finally established, okay, we've got the true warriors in town, but out of town, there's a bit of a turf war between the Unbrood and the junk goblins.
The trash hunters. And that's out of the book. That is the big fight with Bombgazel and Asashla, the Rivener. That is out of the book. We'll get to that in a little bit. Like, I expanded that, but for the most part, that's how it's written. And it's actually written as there are these 2 scenes. There's the scene with the goblins and there's the scene with the Akeshtis. And depending on how those scenes end, it actually says if they attack them, it gives you a bonus here, and if they attack these, it gives you a bonus there, or disadvantage, whatever the case may be. It's written in the book. What wasn't in the book was the goblins being so religious. I introduced that.
Funny though. That was
Great.
you. That was
great.
really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
Gold
I'm super
star.
proud of this.
Yeah, that was a really good
Gold
thing.
star.
I would never in my wildest dreams have imagined goblins as pious individuals, but wow.
I love the idea of it. I think the tower is there, and it's them. They're in the region, but like I forget exactly what the book says about the goblins, but basically you can talk them down. But I was like, no, they have a reason for not letting you get to that item at the top of that tower.
Sure.
And I then wanted, as soon as I decided to do that, I was like, well, what about the junk golem? And I wanted to link this all. And so that's the connection between the Tinkerton. Tinkerton is a made up name that I made. So the junk golem being related to that tower, and the goblins all having this like identity around Triune and praising this deity, and then all of that being connected to the gray in the end, which we'll talk about later on. I wanted to do that, and this is where I started. So yeah, the goblins' religious connection to the junk golem, that's all on me.
Kevin, that provided so much for the story. Like that paid off over
Absolutely.
and over and over again. Like it was amazing.
Yep.
Junk lords.
I thought it was part of the story. It was so woven in. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I am deeply curious how this ties back to the gray, because
Yeah.
that
Me
is
too, me too.
wow.
Me too.
That's a shocker.
Oh yeah, fun fact: gray is not anywhere in Junker's Delight.
Damn,
So,
Kevin. This is your story as much as it is Jason Keeley's, man.
Thank you,
Right.
Jason, for setting the foundation.
I just want to point out something that we as players completely ignored. In episode 25, when Merc sends us on a mission to get on the fetch quest, they tell us that the murder bot is immune to magic.
Right. Yeah.
None of us remembered that.
I think the book actually says that. Like a lot of the lines from Merc and Kesh were copied and pasted into my notes from
Totally.
the PDF. But one thing that wasn't in the Golem, so the Golem fight was just the Golem fight, and I introduced Zethelred. I added Zethelred in there. I added the dead body against the console. I also added all the true warriors in there, and that was probably a little too much.
Kevin, it's time for you to write an AP, bro. It's time.
Yeah, bro.
Like you're ready for it now.
Okay,
Lord.
we're only halfway through plot armor. I'm going to have to create a bot that every time you say you're a bad GM posts.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, dude. Come on.
I appreciate that.
You're a great GM.
This is the part that I had so much fun with. Was like, oh yeah, they're gonna do this and this, and I can do this and this, and like all the prep that I put into this. That's what I enjoyed, was like the writing aspect of it. Which, you know, I have a creative side, but I was like, oh, Zethelred in the book, Zethelred literally falls into a crevice and dies. And for me, that was so sad that Zethelred was like this badass that had his own camp, and then he turns around and dies. And I was like, no, I'm going to at least put him someplace important. And so I put him there, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use him to draw you guys further into the combat. And it worked so bad. And it's just such a good way. You guys were like, oh, I'm going to go. And all of you, I think the three of you, Terme, Chalk, and Thaddeus, ran over to the body of Zethelred, picked up his armor, his dashko, and I added in the glove. I forget the name of the glove.
Eldracarnum.
Eldracarnum glove, because I wanted to be able to give you guys stones and work with those.
It was awesome.
And the Eldracarnum glove is the only way to do that. So I was like, oh, Zethelred would have had something like that, you know. But I twisted it and said it was built by the goblins as opposed to by the Greys from Threefold Conspiracy. Anyways, cool.
So good.
Loved it.
So the fight with the junk golem, yeah, that sucked. It sucks for everybody. It's immune to magic.
Didn't suck for Jack.
Yeah, Chuck was a baller.
What I didn't expect is the True Warriors to be so helpful for you guys, because I think actually that the True Warrior that disappeared, who may or may not come back in Threefold at some point to kill us all, I think he did the most damage on Tinkerton.
It was like 2 crits in a row, wasn't it?
Right, yeah, it was just lucky rolls. That's just how the dice play out. So
This is where you start to see Shaq, like his confidence start to blossom. You know,
Yes.
Put it there, and then and then the insanity starts to, as a result,
To take
I
over.
feel.
The bloodlust.
Yeah.
That, well, like from a character perspective, and I feel like I've talked about this before. Chak was like always designed to be a support character. He was never intended to live in the spotlight. He was really like some sort of Venn diagram between Randall from Recess for the rest of you 90s kids. The way he like reports the progress back to the captain.
I hate Randall so much.
I love that.
And Jack the Monkey from Pirates, the Disney franchise. So like when he hit the kill shot on Tinkerton,
It changed
was like
everything.
his first taste, because up to this point he's only ever been the captain's houseplant. That's why he doesn't have a rank on the boat. So like his first taste of independence, he's finally seen his true potential in the field.
Missed.
I won't say he's drunk with power, but he does
That comes
realize
later.
that right. That certainly comes later.
This feeds into it, because like later on when they're like, well, you killed Tinkerton, so you're a god, you were like, yes. Yes, I am.
Why not me?
But a little more about the Tinkerton fight. So you guys killed Tinkerton and you guys moved on. We were recording live at that time. I was in California. It was actually last November, which is a long time away. I know it took forever. I'm sorry. I talked to John, like, how are we going to do this? Because I knew John, Rolu needed. I put the stone, the puck, the object in Tinkerton. That was always my plan. And John
And
didn't
you
know
had
that.
it in Roll20. In Roll20, the landing page, there was a blue shining light that you had
Right,
for
'cause
a long time.
The cover, the cover of Junker's Delight is. I took that and put it on our landing page. It's a beautiful artwork. Again, everybody who ever does any artwork for Starfinder, thank you, because it's beautiful and lovely. But the drawing on the cover is the landing page. It is the junk golem with I called him Zethelred, but it's actually supposed to be the iconic Vesk from the Starfinder universe. But I pictured that as Zethelred. Zethelred was attacking this thing, and so that's why I put it on our cover. But I dropped the glowing blue eye on it, and because I knew from the beginning that I was going to put that stone somewhere in the game, and that was a perfect place to put it. And so when we got close to that point, and John knew he was going to get the stone because we all know Rolu gets the stone. And I kept telling John, like, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. But I didn't want to tell him where. And then finally, I think that episode came up and I was like, hey, but by the way, like the stone's going to come up in this episode and you're going to have to get it. So I need a way to tell you. I'm going to like cause a scene and make everybody leave. I didn't expect to record that in person. So I was like, oh, well, I'll just take our headphones off and then I'll call, John will be on and then it'll just be the two of us talking, blah, blah, blah. But we were in person, except for everybody but Vinny. Sorry, Vinny. We're at Will's house recording. And I was like, all right, everybody take your headphones off. And I literally sat in the room by myself for 10 minutes while you guys all went upstairs and ate pizza. And I was starving.
We ate without you.
Left the pizza.
You had said to me, just do this and we'll record it later. And so I just didn't know what was going on, but I was like, all right, I'm supposed to leave the room and figure it out.
So we ended up recording it after the fact and then inserting it into the show prior to release. So that scene did not get added until later. And I was hungry and hangry by the end of that. But yeah.
And then you got to eat some pizza.
And then, then you ate tasty pizza.
It wasn't until this exact moment that I realized that was the stone.
Yes. And this is another
I thought
thing.
that eye stopped glowing because we killed Tinkerton. Like that was just part of its circuitry.
No, it's yes. So just for the listener, on our landing page, I added the eye. I added a glow to the eye, and after this episode, I took the glow away and covered the eye with a black hole, as if it was dead. But like we just said, in my view of this, it was the stone the whole time. The stone was so. And the idea is that and we'll get into this a little bit later, but the Gray created Tinkerton to find the stone and bring it back. The problem is back to the Stellar Flare. The Stellar Flare is broken up across the junkyards, and where you were in the fight with the Tinkerton was on the bridge of the Stellar Flare, at least in my mind.
That's why the controls with Zethelred.
Right, and that's why Tinkerton ended up there, is because Tinkerton went back to the Stellar Flare. It was just not the Stellar Flare that the Gray was intending. At least that's how I wrote it. That's in my mind. That's what I had going on.
It's awesome. It's great.
That's spectacular.
Right.
It's fantastic.
That adds up.
Just one more thing about that scene was that I had Chalk, I had Vinny roll to see if he saw Rolu, and he did. And so we also recorded that separately, I think, about basically
Right. That was like an aside, like, hey, by the way, you saw Rolu grab something.
That was also when you had the interview where you were like, hey, we should have Thaddeus and Rolu interview with Goldhorn, which was an awesome vignette. That was great.
We haven't talked about that at all, but I love all of this.
I was waiting to get back to that, actually.
Yeah.
And I think our fans liked it too, where we would take, instead of doing our introductions, we would do asides of our characters on the ship. And what we did was basically a documentary show where we interviewed each of you. Mm-hmm. And I thought it worked out really good. It was also a lot of good spots to introduce things story-wise that I wanted to.
Yeah.
Which included, was that when Thaddeus called himself the big-hearted kitty catty? I think it was. I think it was on.
No, I think you're talking about the Cuddle Puddle. Oh wait, no.
Maybe it was the Cuddle Puddle.
I don't know. Maybe
This only gets better. What are we saying?
They're just those like interview moments with the crew that was interviewing the crew of the Caduceus, like the film crew for the show, that took on a life of its own, and just Yeah, y'all just did like an incredible job bringing out so many sides of your character that you wouldn't normally get to see. You wouldn't have the space for it. It was great.
Yeah. I remember being supremely nervous because like none of this was scripted. None of this was discussed in advance. It was just like in the moment, Kev would pick one of us to pick on, ask a bunch of questions, and you better have an idea of your character.
That was
better know.
That was almost payback. I'll be honest.
Oh yeah,
Was it now? Good old plot armor.
Now I get to ask
It
the
always
questions.
brings out amazing.
But I loved it. They all turned out really great. Every time those episodes came up, it was a lot of fun. And actually, the characters I had to like develop those. The interviewer was a character of his own, you know.
Right.
Well, then there was that like side character way later. I forget what his name was. Where like Thaddeus is like hugging him or bro-fisting him.
George? The boom operator, right?
Yeah, I could look him up. He's in my notes somewhere.
Though. He was a G, whoever he was.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And you like invited him to be a free captain at some point, I think, too.
Maybe he'll replace some of our fewer members of our crew now.
Yeah, there's a lot fewer now. Weird.
That was also when we established that Kasathans dip their hands into someone else's drink when they first agree to a contract. I
forgot that.
Dip it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's canon now.
Cool. It's canon. Yeah, it's just Paizo lore. Yeah, for sure.
I forget where we were. Where were we?
We were talking about
the intro.
Yeah, we just killed
between-
Tinkerton.
yeah.
So you killed Tinkerton, and you came back. I think you saw a goblin run away. And honestly, the reason I introduced that goblin was because I wasn't sure if you guys would roll high enough to see Rolu take the stone. And you did. I misheard. That's what happened. So I misheard Vinny say his roll was high enough in the game. And when I went back and listened to it, Vinny was like, "Oh, I rolled a 32 and I only heard 3 or something like that." And I was like, "Oh, so nobody saw anything, but Rolu saw a goblin run away." So that was just to distract you guys. And then all of you were like, "Oh, it was something important. That goblin was something or something." And I was like, "No." And that's when we went back and recorded the Chalk conversation where he saw.
So like from the audience, this was like 4 weeks later. I get a DM from Kev saying, "Oh, by the way, Chuck did pass." Hey, what are you doing?
I need you to say this, and this, and to us. Yeah.
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 Hey, you definitely passed this roll. So you saw Rolu do this, that, the other.
Yeah. Because I wanted Chalk to also be aware of that in game. Like,
Yeah.
Chalk being almost like a side character, but like he's so much more aware of everything than people let on. And I think it was one of you guys pointed out, like your intonation when you're playing Chalk changes when you're talking to the captain versus when you're playing in game. You like when you're talking to the captain, it's more proper and more like
Oh yeah,
uplifted.
probably.
Yeah, probably.
I'm actually curious to hear more of that because I don't do it intentionally.
Again, you're just getting
inhabit
you're
your
just-
character.
Yeah, you just inhabit your character. I
Which-
have to say this is. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Which like when we, what's really funny is like when Kev and I had these sidebars, it was like, when is this going to come up? When is Chat going to reveal this to the rest of the cast, to the rest of the crew? And it was in the moment, and I think we'll get to it in about 10 or 15 more episodes, where like we start to pickpocket Rolu while he's sleeping.
And I wasn't sure when that was going to pop up either. And I didn't expect you to say it at that time. And
I did, and nobody picked up on it.
Nobody, but I did. And I was like, yes!
awesome.
Oh, yes! So good.
Wait, say this again, please.
We'll get there in
We'll
about
get to
15
it.
episodes.
I just want to add to that. I think it was at this time that Terme and Thaddeus, like getting the documents, that was from before, but there was something else here that was going on that was like really great. Do you want to talk about that? No, don't remember.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I was talking to you and
the
Will.
voicemail.
Are you
Yeah,
talking
that
about
was
asking Terme to pull that data, right?
Yeah, but that you asked earlier, but then it took a while for it to come.
Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you got it back, and then you finally, like, you were able to sit down and read it, I think, is where we were at this point.
Yeah.
And Terme, you read it, but like you still didn't get it. You were like, they're just talking about a bunch of T-shirts. They're like, what is this? I don't know. But Thaddeus is like, no, I know this is something. I got this. I know this is damaging. And you're like, Terme was like, I don't know. I'm not seeing it.
I think at this point,
was the yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Thaddeus tells because Rolu's over somewhere doing something suspicious, and then like Shaq and Tremaine are here, and Thaddeus is like, "Look, this is your he says something about how like I'm sure that wasn't the Here's poster revealed at this point, or was that later?
I think so. I think it was right around the Tinkerton kill was when you guys finally got the message that Here's is a wanted criminal, according to the Free Captains. Wanted dead or alive for treason against the Free Captains.
So that's the first time that Thaddeus basically says to the group openly, minus Rolu, like, Rolu's like, you got to watch out for this guy. Because he already knew he was on his ship and stuff.
And what I'm curious, like, what did you guys think at this point? Because again, I wasn't revealing too much to you as players, Vinny and Will. Like, John and Kelly knew this was coming, but like you two didn't.
But yeah.
So when I dropped that poster on you, I was like, we'll see how this happens. Boop.
Okay, so this is a conversation that John and I actually had this morning. Like, is this poster? Is this notification like? And this is really sad, so I hate to compare it to this, but is this like an Amber Alert we get on our phone, a couple of times a week, like that?
I would say no. It's
or
more,
is this like once a year, once every 5 years, someone has wronged the Free Captains enough that this is like an APB for?
I think it's more of an APB.
Person.
It is a fleet wide. Hey, this guy is a fucking traitor. Message that you guys. That's why it was like blasted to everyone. Even Rolu got that message.
But because like culturally, this is exceptional.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal.
Yes. Before that, I just liked how Thaddeus was like the driving, like there's something up, like there's something here, and you should pay attention. And especially Terme, you just had this great reaction, which is like starting to introduce the different perspectives, as Kelly and I have talked about, like the perspective from Rolu and the perspective from Thaddeus. And Terme, you just had this like, you were like, sure, I'll look into that for you. Like, that's kind of odd, but like that's what I do. So I'll do that for you. And then even when you gave it to him, and then even when he said it, and then even when he holds up the poster, you're like, I think I'm starting to put it together. Like, yeah, you played it perfectly.
Yeah.
The skepticism was valid for sure.
Yeah.
I think.
What did you think? Yeah.
My skeptical attitude, I sort of brought into Terme as trying to be, the broker between members on the ship and different interests on the ship. What I imagine, like, kind of the yeoman has to take a very bureaucratic, detached look from the rest of the crew, perhaps. And so I think, like, for me, wanting also, like, didn't want my character to necessarily pick a side yet.
Right.
Didn't want to. It was awkward for me, I'll be honest, to try and play it, because I wasn't, like, I know where it was going to a degree. Like, obviously I didn't know to what extent, but I wanted to see how far it would go before I would have to make that sort of call.
That decision. That makes sense. Like that's probably
so
wise,
Terme.
actually.
Yeah.
Another point for Terme's wisdom, to be honest. I was going to say, you all don't know until later, and we'll get into this, that like Thaddeus already was put on the ship so that he could keep an eye on Rolu. So there was already stuff.
Even John didn't really know that until this last episode.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk about that as it comes up.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And I was just going to say, I really like that Terme played that, because it's like you already have like Thaddeus and Rolu, so it's like two sides of an extreme. Cool, like they're setting up a conflict, and then you have Chak, who's like blossoming into this like wild thing, and then Terme, like you were the important, like, and we'll get to it at the end, but it's like if you hadn't, like if Chak hadn't convinced you, things would have gone differently. Like, right, like you were the important piece there for things to move that they did. Like that was the final domino that needed to fall. If that didn't happen, it was going to be different. And to your point about the being awkward, like I get it. I think it's just us all being transparent with each other, very clear about what we're okay with, especially when it comes to like this kind of interplayer conflict that bleeds into your characters. Like we've all like behind the scenes, we're all transparent and open and checking in and like making sure it's, cool.
So like, and to be abundantly transparent, I still don't know if John f***ed me on that.
It must be said.
It has to be said.
Okay,
But like, I
We'll get
sort
to
of
that in a
imagine
minute.
Yeah, we'll talk.
I can't
to that
wait
in
to
a
get
while.
to it too. But yeah.
an ideological diamond where we've got Thaddeus on the left, we've got Rolu on the right, Termaiden is our anchor on the ground,
Yeah.
and Chuck is just up in the clouds doing whatever the f*** he wants.
Doing whatever Chuck does.
And as a
Floating in the
GM, like
breeze.
again,
Which is hilarious to me because like we've talked so many times about how terrible mechanically the makeup of our party is.
Right. Not missing a lot of things. Only one
sure.
person can have medicine, computers.
One person can do medicine and computers. We have no tank.
somebody had like a 10 in piloting for no reason.
That was me.
Because we were
Hi.
pirates.
Yeah, because we were pirates.
I fully expected to pilot a craft at some point.
Yeah, I was
Totally.
expecting that too, guy.
But like the intrigue and how we melded as a crew was always really entertaining.
Well,
to
and
me.
this is me. I'm guilty of this, and I'm sorry, Will, because you were the experiment. I had Rolu. I know Rolu. I know where he starts. I know where he ends, and then I have Thaddeus, who's chasing Rolu. So there's clear like opposites, and like you said, there's a triangle. Then we have Chalk, and I know Chalk. Chalk is Goldhorn's plant, who's now getting out and experiencing life for the first time. But it's Terme. Terme was the unknown, and I was so every time one of these pivot points came, I had no idea how you were going to respond. But that's the experiment. It was you knew nothing going through this entire game.
I really didn't.
And every time it came up, I was just like, what is he going to do? And I was just like, I'm watching you. Like, oh my God, how is he going to respond? And I think how Terme responds is almost how the listener is probably responding to all these.
Yeah, I think Termaiden was the Greek chorus of this drama.
Right.
Yeah, you were the good chorus. You were the barometer for the bullshit and everything. Yeah.
And I love him for that. It's so good. And I'm sorry that you had to fall to that
That's
position,
fine.
but you did wonderfully.
Happy to be experimented on, I suppose.
Can you say that again into the mic so I can just know that for
For future reference, so you can scrape
threefold?
this audio.
Yeah,
Been
I'll scrape
experimented
it
on
and
so much by John.
yeah, so much. Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, so you guys finish your tasks. You go back to Merc and Kesh. You tell them, hey, we found all the parts. Get us into the Stellar Flare. Vari 13 is still with you during all of that.
Kevin, are Merc and Kesh, like, did you already determine that they were together, or did you just, like, under pressure at the end, you're like, nah, they're together? Were they together, like, from the very beginning in your head, in your canon?
No. So in the book, they're just friends.
Okay.
And they're kind of described that way. As for the relationship between them, I think like it was John's like Rolu's relationship to the other Keshti that kind of led to
Yeah?
letting Merc and Kesh kind of blend closer. I like them. I like the idea of them being
Yeah,
a
they're a
pair.
good couple, I think.
I shipped them for you.
Yeah, you ship them. Yeah. Good. I do.
So I felt like it was really interesting what felt like early on, and I wasn't sure if it was a security blanket or if it was an implied romantic interest between Very 13 and Rolu. What you guys didn't see, John was like, "Whoa! I've never seen your eyes that wide in 30-something years." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I think Chalk would be really interested in Merc and Kesh, and like, what would a throuple look like in
Right.
in
And
this
there was
context?
like a Chalk Merc thing going on for a little bit too, which we never got back to. But
We never did.
and that's okay.
We'll get to the back end of it as we get to later episodes. Go ahead, Kelly.
Is Rolu interested in, what's his name?
Cordal?
Quartle?
Coral?
Yeah.
Coral?
Like
Portal?
romantically
Yeah,
and stuff?
100%.
Oh, okay.
100%,
All right, cool. I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
It's good to know. I ship them too.
Cool. Okay, so you guys
Thank
you guys head off to the Stellar or to the Stellar Flare itself. You brought everything. You're like, hey, this is all the parts you need. Merc and Kesh were like, cool, I got the parts. We can make a bomb because that's what people do. And You make your way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just
just
take
what people-
spare
people.
parts
Yeah.
and make bombs.
Yep. That's what everyone does, Kev.
Everyone
And
knows.
so then
right.
you go
So
to the
right.
stellar flare, and again, I think the stellar flare. I forget exactly how it's written in the book, but I added that religious tone to it. That it is some kind of temple to
great.
the trash hunters, but it meant
Great.
nothing to the Akeshtis. I kind of wanted to add that in.
So the Akeshtis, because like right after we hopped in, we saw the two. Well, one, we had a really fun rude awakening with that fucking turret.
Sorry.
After we got past that, that was a terror. Okay, anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Finding the two Akeshti that just teleported in and were immediately mowed down by the same fucking turret.
Right.
Like that conflict, the turf war between the Akeshti and the goblins was really personified in that single, like, okay, the goblins claimed dibs because they had the know-how to get in, but also the Akeshti were there first. And that, like, how much of this you made up and how much tension it created is wildly impressive.
So I think I just dropped you onto the page on Roll20 just so you can see.
You
this
did.
This is the actual size of the map the book is given.
Wow.
It's tiny, and this I'm angry about. This is my biggest complaint about this book, is the mid zone is too small. So I actually sized this up. I think I forget what it is. I doubled it at least, if not
Oh
quadrupled it.
yeah, and you made it
One
vertical,
square is like
too.
20
Wow.
feet or 10 feet.
Yeah.
You can't
And
even
Because you set up a literal turf war.
a literal turf war. And in the book, it is Bomb Gozzle is on one side, Asasha is on the other, and you guys in the middle, and you guys are fighting each other. There is a rule in the book about like you could roll diplomacy to get them to attack each other, but I was like, no, we need more. So I added in the Akeshtis on one side and the goblins on the other, and I had them fighting each other. I think it mentions them kind of in the background in the book. Like they're supposed to be like, oh, they're on the sides, but like the fight is just the three of you. It's the your group and the two big bads.
Yeah.
But let me take you now from what you see now on the map, which is small. I dropped you into where's the other mid zone? This scene.
I was trying to draw.
So I turned it. I also turned it because the stellar flare is set where the door is to the south. So I rotated the mid zone so that it would be the same orientation.
Makes sense.
And then I just expanded that page up. And when I did that, I was able to add in all the extra goblins and Akeshtis, but I only wanted them to be background, so I didn't want them to be actually a part of the fight, which is hilarious because I think it was Terme who was like, I want to kill all the goblins.
Yeah.
And he started targeting them, and I was like, no, you can't do that. You can't target them. And you were like, why? And I was like, please don't. I didn't account for this. Yeah, so you guys, so I dropped you into the mid zone. I gave you that big fight. It has a little play, but I was able to I let you guys talk down Bomb Gozzle. Asashla,
You let us try to talk down Bomb Gozzle.
Asashla was always going to die. I believe it says that in the book. I think Bomb Gozzle, I forget exactly what it says in the book about whether or not you can. Basically, once he's down, he runs away. Like he's out of his armor, he's got less strength, whatever. He runs off. But I was like, no, you guys can communicate with him. And that's when Rolu kicked him in the ass.
Well, so Rolu didn't kick him in the ass until after the conflict was resolved.
Right.
What I thought was really intriguing, and I thought was a really interesting take on turf wars, was we had not a single, like, because usually especially in tabletop realms, you've got a really clear villain, you've got a really clear hero, and your villain and your hero duke it out on the field of battle until one of them wins. So, like, I felt like this was a much more accurate representation of what conflict really looks like. You've got factions that you really have no influence on the map fighting each other. We had factions of goblins and factions of Akeshti that were in very clear, open, firing shots at each other. We had Asashla who was just like wrecking goblins and Akeshtis alike, Akeshtis that weren't necessarily following her orders. We had Bomb Gozzle in this really sort of cobbled together suit of armor who was monumentally pissed at Chalk for killing Tinkerton. Another nod to your religious, to the pious nature of goblins in this universe.
Yep.
And like how real and how lived in this world felt at this moment might have been the most lived in of just about any world that I've been in a tabletop experience.
I have to thank Chalk for that. Like, it was funny because all of you, I think Tremaine took the lead on saying like, "Hey, let's talk this out. Like, we believe in the same God that you do." And then Chalk rolled a wisdom save and was like, "No, that! I killed him. I'm the king."
No.
It doesn't end there.
This, because I almost forgot about this. This was when Chalk doubled down on the "I'm receiving a message from Triune."
I remember that.
Like, we all broke. We all broke so quickly with that. It was
It
amazing.
was so good.
It was so good.
It was like a top 3 moment of the entire show.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
was
you guys,
funny.
so you could finish that fight. Sasha died. Some Kestis died. Some goblins died. Bomb Guzzle broke into pieces, and turned out it wasn't Bob Guzzle. It was Bomb Guzzle and 2 other goblins it was three goblins in a mech suit.
Perfect.
I just want to
Excellent.
personally thank Kev for making that happen.
Yeah.
I was asking for 3 goblins in something for months.
I was like, "This is perfect. I'm going to make this happen."
It's true.
And I literally changed it the night of. Like, yeah. And then you guys took camp there, and during the camp, I put you guys in the watches, and I randomly coupled you with different characters. Those scenes turned out, again, this is just me fucking around. Like, I'm going to give you guys a second chance to, like, just improv it out. And Chalk, you had a whole... Let's go knock on the doors.
Yeah,
Ding dong ditch.
Well, like, it was right around Halloween. So,
Yeah.
like, I had just done the whole trick-or-treating thing. My wife took the kids to get candy, and I was the one that stayed at the
TP'd
house
some
and handed stuff
houses.
out. Whatever happens, happens. I will neither confirm nor deny that happened. But, like,
Only 2
yeah,
people you know, and then help them.
why not Ding Dong Ditch a sacred monument, right? What's the worst that could be in there?
He said sheepishly.
Yeah. Oh, the confidence
like-
of youth.
In hindsight, like, this fucking rutabaga had no idea that they were drift dead that could have answered the door.
Right?
But yeah, why not? Just like, knock, knock, knock. What happens, happens.
Yeah.
And I think that turned into such a cool scene.
Yes.
But I gave each of you that opportunity, and then I was literally rolling randomly about whether or not you would see something, and it was for Rolu that I added in the pterosaurs. And pterosaurs are an actual character from one of the Alien archives, and I was like, I wanted a creature that was large and intimidating that could fly, but that didn't. I had to ground them because nothing flies in Kafak. I had to like reinforce that. And so I was like, I'm going to make these pterosaurs walk across the desert. But I was fully ready for you guys to fight these things. I had stat blocks and everything, but Rolu chickened out and just let him walk by. So
Did I chicken out, or did I just make a tactical call? No, I mean, it was a cool scene, and I'm always a fan of, like, the tension that happens, and then just like with the people knocking at the door, and then like you're waiting for it to happen, and then it doesn't, because there's already enough that went on with just that whole fight that we didn't need that. We didn't need that.
And I thought that was good. I think that was a good resolve. Like, it was just enough tension in the middle of the night to keep going. And I think this goes back to playing D&D with you guys, where it was every time we went down for a nap, somebody had to wake us up for combat. And there are rules to, like, random encounters and all that fun stuff. And it's fun stuff. I hate being woken up in the middle of the night, period. That's all. That's all.
Yeah.
Cool. So we woke up the next morning and we were like, hey, let's go into the Stellar Flare. That's when shit hit the fan. Stellar Flare was intense, and I don't... we'll talk about how much I changed on it. I really didn't change all that much. That trap was legit. The turret was legit. In fact, the only thing that wasn't legit was how easy it was to stop.
Is it because we did awesome?
I don't remember it being easy at all. I remember it mowing down like 3 goblins outside the front door.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it only killed
Dark,
one
by the way,
goblin.
Kevin, the way you described that.
but
I think it was only one goblin. I think I managed to like position them a certain way. You did try to invite Vari 13 in, which they probably would have gone down in that attack.
That I distinctly remember, like, no, we were Fairy 13, you really should come with us. And Kev was like, no, she really should wait outside.
They should wait outside.
Yeah.
They should wait outside. Thank you.
I think I remember saying, like, it's dangerous in there, and they probably shouldn't. So,
Yeah.
but that trap, I think I played pretty straight out of the book. It's hard to stop.
trap.
It's hard to trick, and it will tear you down. Traps in my notes right now just says traps suck.
Yeah.
Like Starfinder traps are dangerous.
Because I think Chalk is the only one with computers, right? Is that, or like the highest computers?
Yeah, you have the highest computers.
Absolutely.
And so, like, Chuck tried to take care of a couple of different things and eventually just fucking shot the damn thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just going to shoot the computer because.
And this is one of the conversations I had with Jeremy and Adam in my like Junkers GM group about like, what do I do for this trap? Because they're going to try this, and this. Like, I need to have every avenue covered and figure it out. And it's one of those things like, well, this is what the book says. This is what the rules say. This is what you could do. And I thank both of them so much for all their support, both emotionally and technically, during this campaign. But yeah, you guys made it through the trap though. You actually handled it pretty well. You realized it was going to run for, I think, 6 rounds. So you just hid from it. And then
we ran out.
Took it out. So you got through that trap. All the ghost shit in the book, the ghosts are in that room and you fight them. The dead drifts are back in that back room. Everything else I inserted.
Beautiful.
Dude.
I inserted the scene in the room where you heard the tray drop. I inserted all the things walking through the hallways, and I love the way those scenes played out on that episode.
I very distinctly remember like such a Sixth Sense moment of like, okay, I'm trying to explain to the rest of the crew like this is what I'm seeing, and no one believes me.
Right?
Yeah. It's exactly
And
it.
I didn't expect it to come out that way. I thought it was you guys would be like, oh, that there's ghosts here, like be ready. But no, it was like it tore you guys apart. It was I don't believe that shit, and it got into the conversation about like what does it mean to be a ghost? But yeah, in the book it's just two Drift Dead are in those 2 rooms or in that one room.
From a metagaming perspective, one, I felt like the ghosts were indicating something. Okay, we need to go explore this space because that's the signpost for me to guide us in that particular direction. From a narrative perspective, like Chalk is on his first ever field mission. He's seeing fucking ghosts.
Seeing shit.
So like the rest of the crew's like, yo, are you all right, dude? You need a vacation because what you're doing is not consistent with what the rest of us is doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It was awesome.
I had a lot of fun prepping the Stellar Flare stuff. I think I was really upset with myself because I meant to the security bot is like supposed to be located somewhere, and you guys run into it. I was like, well, I'm going to make it move, and so I was like, I'm going to put it in this corner, and every round I'm going to move it 3 squares or whatever. And I forgot. I was so enthralled with that fight with the turret that by the time you guys solved the turret and figured it out, it was Will that was like, what's that thing in the corner? And I'm not even sure that made it into the edit. And I was like, no, fuck me. And that was just, again, it was I just forgot. I had it on my Excel sheet and everything to do that, and it just didn't happen.
You were doing a great job. Don't worry.
Right. So like
The artwork disappeared. I can't delete it. Damn it.
It's fine.
explicitly you forgot, but also like just the sound, just the description of that ticking sound, the tap,
Ting,
tap,
ting,
tap.
ting, ting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the ominous nature of the inside of the Stellar Flare, or the part that we're in right now, or the part that we were in to finish the adventure.
Yeah, and again, like I added a ton of stuff to this, but like I didn't vary too much from what was already provided. I just developed it more, and that's my advice to new GMs is don't be afraid to embellish that. Don't just make it your own.
You made an atmosphere. And it's when the atmosphere influences player decisions that I think you start to get to the real fun part of the game. Benny said it, and I just realized it earlier. When you made the conflict between the Keshis and the goblins and us and all that feel so real, John, as Rolu, kicked over Bombgazzle because I was like mad at Bombgazzle because I thought Bombgazzle was going to be on our side. And then Bombgazzle got attack chalk. And I'm like, what the hell? Don't you see what the real problem is here? Like, we are helping you out. And I got upset. And then in the Stellar Flare, this ambiance made us question Shock. It made us question what was going on. Like, what is the actual purpose here? What did we get ourselves into? And it's all because you added in these extra things that changed the ambiance and the environment and how we felt just looking at a map on a screen.
Right.
And that's something I played a lot with was like, where do I drop these things so you run into them next, and how do I describe them?
It's great.
I felt like this was a significant shift from happy-go-lucky pirate adventure in the desert to thriller. Psychological, you don't know what's behind this door. If it's going to be an empty room, if it's going to be a wall of sand, if it's going to be zombie drifthead trying to kill you.
If it's going to be an electric floor that shocks and kills you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
that was by the book.
Fun house.
The electric shock was by the book.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't, and that's the thing is I didn't change the mechanics of the Stellar Flare at all. I just, like you said, I changed the ambiance.
The atmosphere. Yeah.
You made it far more sinister. That's for sure.
It really
Right.
was.
Which was awesome.
I also did. I'm sad you guys didn't use.
Round of
I think
applause.
Rolu was the only one to actually use anything. I did add all of that stuff into the storage unit with the spell gems and the scrolls.
I was going to use the acidic mist on Testrana.
I know.
Yeah, and then you nerf that. Anyway.
We'll talk this in a bit. We'll talk
From a universal perspective, pre-gap relics have to have a ridiculous amount of value. So dropping pre-gap scrolls into the Stellar Flare not only aged the Stellar Flare appropriately, but also were okay, these are the stakes that you are playing on.
And I think the only thing that's actually in that room in the book is the zero. It's not even.
Frost.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a burp. The Zero Frost Blaster. It's not that in the book. I forget what it is.
Frostbite Class 0 pistol.
Right. In the book, it's a melee weapon that has a ghost killer fusion. And one thing
that would have been useful.
That's really
Right.
useful.
Yeah, wow.
But the problem is, you guys, none of you are melee fighters. Even after I gave the Dashko to Kelly. By the way, everything that Zethelred dropped was not in the book. I added all of that for you guys to play with, including Kelly asked me for a flaming sword from the very beginning of this book. And I was like, I'll try to work that in. So I gave him a flaming Ember Dashko, which is actually out of Junker's Delight. It was made for this book, but it was the flaming Dashko is Dotrulu's weapon. That's the only reason it's in this book.
When I was talking to Kevin, I was like, actually, initially I wanted a lightsaber is what I wanted. So basically, when Tez Tronin showed up, not Tez Tronin. Yeah, Tez Tronin showed up. I was like, yes, perfect. This is where I'm getting it from. Kevin's dropping it for me. the Solarian. And I was like, when we're done with her, I'm going to pick off
Solarians can't drop their weapons. It says that in the book.
Whatever. I didn't know that. But then, anyway, things turned out as they did. Those scrolls are really from Pathfinder era, like pre-gap. So
I forget exactly how I worked them out. I think I actually pulled all the spells I pulled. I think I pulled from Starfinder. So I found Starfinder spells that would work on, and I put them on scrolls. But and this is just talking about I love Paizo for this. Is a lot of stuff that comes from Pathfinder is directly linked, or Starfinder is directly linked to Pathfinder. So the spells aren't that different. They all correlate. So.
as a random side point, but the connection between Pathfinder and Starfinder, it'd be kind of cool to see elves and dwarves because they still exist in this universe. They're seldom
elves
played.
do. They're on Castrovel.
Yeah, but it'd be kind of cool to see them around again. Anyway,
Yeah, elves canonically come from Castrovel. Anyway,
That's data storage, supply closet.
were you looking else to see what we did?
Yeah, I'm actually. So supply closet is actually only 2 paragraphs long, and it says During a shore leave on Aposte, a clever drow merchant duped a member of the ship's crew into spending their credits on an unwieldy magic weapon. Later, the embarrassed crew member hid their purchase. A character who succeeds at DC 21 perception check finds a loose panel with the Ghost Killer tactical swoop hammer. But this is Joker's Delight being amazing. Is there is this? I'll show you guys the screen. There are these blue blocks. That blue block is a GM note, and the GM note says, if your players aren't melee characters, you might want to give them an alternative. And the alternative is the zero. Where is it?
Zero class frostbite pistol.
Yes. A frostbite class zero pistol. It says you might want to actually switch it. So I did, and that's because you get at least half damage from that, as opposed to. But also, I also thought too that the Ghost Killer fusion was very telling, and I didn't want that to be a spoiler.
Sure,
fair enough.
So the something, and I want to take a half step back before we get into the Stellar Flare. When we were doing our overnight watches, one of the myths, I guess, that the Goblin shared with Chuck was that the ship groans every few years. Like somebody tries to leave with the ship every so often.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I made all that shit up. But
Awesome.
that was my idea was like each of them when I think in the book there is a section where they tell you like I think it's Kesh and Merc are the ones that tell you like rumors about the Stellar Flare. And they give you some ideas. I think about the ghosts is in there, and it's just like sentences. It's a single sentence. Hey, there's ghosts, there's blah, blah. And so, but the one with the groaning, I think I made that one up. The idea was that at least the idea that I put into it was these drift dead that are in here occasionally try to start the ship. They all come back to life, or enough that they are able to start up the ship and get it moving, and then it doesn't go anywhere. But in reality, what was actually happening is the Gray. And we'll talk about the Gray in a little bit. But the Gray is doing shit. And that is what the Akeshtis and the Goblins are hearing. Another thing I was playing with, too, is that the Goblins have a very short lifespan. I think their lifespan is only 40 or 60 years. So the idea that they have accelerated aging.
Yeah.
So a young Akeshti versus an old Akeshti is much shorter than what you're used to. So 10 years is a long time to a Goblin. Is kind of what I wanted to play with.
That's fair.
Will, fantastic use of all your equipment inside the Stellar Flare.
Oh my god.
What did I do?
Wow.
Both before and after.
The flash grenade with the proximity mine, like all of that stuff.
Genius.
I try.
Well, and I feel like Will is becoming famous for like, okay, I'm going to
Gadgetry.
create all of this synergy between my features and my abilities and my equipment.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this goes back to our D&D game, which you weren't a part of, Vinny. Ball bearings. Will's rogue always carried ball bearing balls, just to clarify, ball bearing balls, and would throw them at the most opportune times, which led to, I think, a multi-kill of wolves on
a rickety
very
bridge.
small bridge. Yeah.
Many wolves dropped to their death. Where after Kevin posted like a picture of a bunch of dead wolves, like notes. Yep. As a way to mock all of us, I think. Yep, it's funny.
Well,
I'd like to try and think about what my character would purchase and take with him on a journey such as this. And I was gonna mention it too when we were doing the Zethel Red camp. I was like marking, like I try to I look at these like puzzles as puzzles, and my character's like trying to navigate. So you would like leave breadcrumbs, be like, okay, let's step here, guys. Come on.
And I think I just skipped over that, but yeah, the Zethel Red map that's it straight out of the book. Is there are locations where there are mines, and if you get hit by the mine, you explode. And I think it was Will that was like, wait, we need to figure out where these mines are, and play Minesweeper
in case we have to run through this again.
Yeah,
which
and it worked out so well.
It was hilarious to me as an audience member, because like Terminator is like, yes, this is Minesweeper. We need to take a systematic approach, and Jack is like, la 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 la. I'm just gonna run through what's going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. That was one of those episodes that I was like, I don't know how this is going to play out. We'll see.
Classic.
Yep.
But
awesome.
so you guys made it through Stellar Flare. I think Stellar Flare took about 4 or 5 episodes to get through. I had a lot of fun with that. I think you guys played through it really well. You were very skeptical and moving around. That's when I introduced the Gray for the first time officially. Was you guys came across that center corridor, and I had the wall of blackness, and I had the leg going through the wall. Again, you guys didn't know it was a Gray. You still didn't know it was a Gray. And then you guys ended up fighting the 2 Drift Deads. I connected it all to the ghosts. I gave them personalities. The 2 Drift Deads that were in there are the same Drift Dead, and they were just Drift Dead. But I was like, well, the book does mention Dr. Swinney. And I was like, why isn't Dr. Swinney mentioned anywhere else in this book? And so I made Dr. Swinney one of the 2 Drift Deads. And that's where I added in the tags, the ID tags. The ID tags are mentioned in the book, but not specifically. I think it says like, oh, they can find them. But I was like, no, they find them on the body. It makes sense that those are like badges that they're wearing. Yeah. Which those didn't really come into play at any point, more than I thought they would. But it was still fun.
For the turret.
Yeah,
But it never actually came. It didn't like. It never was
door.
actively used. Right. It's not like you guys were like, the turret's on and I'm standing here and it's not hitting me. I don't think that actually happened. Did it? It might have.
I don't think it did. I think by the time it mattered, it truly would have smashed it to pieces.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. But it was still a great part of the world to add in, right?
There was a couple times that I was like, oh man, Rolu's not wearing it. He's about to die. Like, if you guys would have said, I'm starting it up now, and then, I would have killed Rolu. Anyways, then I added the TV in there and the lighting, but the electricity trap was in there and in the book as is. I didn't change much of that. Mm-hmm. And then the lab. I changed everything in the lab.
The lab is where the ghosts were?
No, the lab's where the Gray was.
The study room is where the ghosts were. I did add in the artifact thing that you guys found, and I was shocked that you guys were so fixated on the artifact, because again, that's a MacGuffin. There was like the thing on the floor that was the
MacGuffin, a red herring, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it was a red herring.
What I really love as a picture of a MacGuffin is the beginning, if anyone's ever seen it, of Lego Batman, where the plane flying with all of the Batman villains is called MacGuffin Air. A MacGuffin is basically a plot device where it is the incentive for the protagonist to go do what they are going to do in the story.
But not the actual reason. No, the puck is the real objective.
It might be
a
the
MacGuffin
real reason.
is a false
stated
objective.
Yep.
Oh, okay. This is new. I thought the MacGuffin is just an object that is the reason. It doesn't matter whether it's real or like a fake one is a red herring. If it like a MacGuffin's like I gotta go get the one ring because that's a MacGuffin.
Right.
And we talked about Jason Keeley, and there was a divine. I forget definition. I'm so sorry about your guys' podcast title. I'm just running a blank. There's a podcast that talks. They actually interviewed Jason Keeley about this episode, and we'll drop the link for it. But and he mentions that the MacGuffin is the drift drive the entire time. The MacGuffin is the drift drive. It is an object. This is by definition, according to dictionary.com, an object or device in a movie or book that serves merely as a trigger for a plot point.
Okay.
So I was using the little statue of Triune to get you guys into the room. That was it.
So that is a MacGuffin. Okay.
It is a MacGuffin.
So the puck is not a MacGuffin. That makes sense.
So I guess a red herring would be that plus the fact that it is false. It is a false narrative.
Yes.
I
to
think
draw you away.
so. I think the statue of Triune was a red herring.
Yes. It was also a MacGuffin.
Because what happened was, Chuck, at least I as the player, thought the statue was the trigger for whatever we were afraid of.
Yep.
Or like whatever Wilson.
Yeah,
we
like
needed to
haunting.
make for
And
fear.
so was Terme was all over it too. He was like, "What if I destroy it? Will that save me?" And I was like, "You can roll mysticism, I guess." I made this up, man. I don't know, but
the games are made up and the points don't matter. Yeah,
right. And the way you guys handled those were, I loved those. I loved playing that game with you fighting the incorporeals, and like the whole action scene at the end where you were all like back to back to back to back.
John
glorious.
Wicking it.
Yep.
Well, like so there was a lot. There were a few moments where Chuck was like, because this is his first field experience, hitting the kill shot on Tinkerton was one of the most surreal, like, okay, I can actually do this. I'm a real field agent right now. Getting knocked down multiple times by the Drift Dead was one of those like come to Jesus moments where Chuck was like, okay, maybe I'm not actually cut out for this.
Because you also took out Bomb Guzzle, right? Or Sashla, one of the two. You like got the final shot on them. So yeah, you're right. You were like inflated ego at that point, and then
absolutely.
Then you rolled. I love the wisdom saves. And how you always fail them.
Same.
Well, like, so this is what happens as a player. So because the conflict is existentially,
Love it.
I want to do a thing. I think this is a good choice. But we are all on this podcast playing other individuals. So like, how do we make these individuals feel lived in? How do we make decisions on behalf of other people that we hope would be authentic to them?
Yeah.
I just sort of
So
took
true.
the easy way out and said, "We'll let the dice decide."
Well, and I think it
Amazing
fit
choice,
perfectly
by the way.
for Chalk because like Chalk is kind of what's the word for it? Unpredictable to
Foolhardy.
begin with. Yeah, and so it's like leaving that up to the dice was the right answer, I think.
I
and it
look
made
at
for some
Chalk
amazing scenes.
as a leaf in the wind, just blowing around, floating by.
Fair.
And like however way the wind blows, is how
That's
Chalk
the
goes.
Raxlight life.
So we've talked recently about writing bios for our website for the Junker's Delight characters, not just for our threefold characters.
Finally.
And I describe Chalk as everyone's drunk uncle who makes most of their decision by rolls of the dice.
I like it.
I think that's Chalk. That's the Raxolite lifestyle.
I didn't choose the Raxolite.
It chose me.
It chose
The
me.
Raxolite chose me.
So that led you guys into the lab finally. That is like the lab is the final stage. Even with the Dotrulu fight, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So you guys got into the lab, you got through that clean room. So here's where things took a left turn. The book says there's a drift phantom, and you find the information. I added the gray. I added the gray for the whole story purpose. I added the gray to connect us back to Threefold. And I told John didn't know about the gray until too late. And I was like, hey, John, I got this idea for this gray. I told him like really early on.
That's fine.
When I finally
It's all good.
pointed out where it was going to be, I think John was like,
Yeah, that's
don't
fine.
put the gray in. Just don't do it. And I was like, well, too late. I'm already doing it, man. I didn't say that to him, but that's kind of like how it ended up.
Kev said, "You're not my real dad."
But yeah, I think putting the gray in there, I added the gray in a little bit, but I didn't want them to make them too strong. I didn't want them to make them take over the scene. But the idea is that the gray has been here for 300 years, since the wreck 300 years ago. And it's been closed inside of this lab for that long. And it's been trying to get a hold of that stone.
Different.
And it was only
Yeah.
in the last 10 years that it was able to create Tinkerton to go outside and get it.
What?
But it is an old gray that's been isolated for that long, which is another reason I made the Aklo language be.
Okay, I'm calling a timeout. Here's why. What Kev just said, and I don't want this to be lost on anyone, within the last 10 years created Tinkerton to come out. So Kev just tied together the short lifespan of goblins, the short lifespan of Akeshti, the existence of the gray in the lab, and everything that's happening on the stellar flare to one single sentence. The gray created Tinkerton to go out and find this rock, which served as a whole lot of inspiration for what we as a crew did.
I mean, that was my gimmicks for it. I wouldn't say that the stuff like I think the Drift Dead existed long before this. I think the
Sure.
Drift Dead probably existed since the crash. And what I'm getting at is like the gray has been experimenting this whole time. It wasn't until the last 10 years that they were like, well, I can conjure this drift golem to go get it. And then the drift phantom was kind of a separate thing. I originally
Why didn't the Gray go himself?
because grays aren't supposed to be seen. It's part of their culture.
Okay.
That's at least that's the way I viewed it. Was like they're secretive.
I would agree. It's a cultural aspect that they have to exist in the shadows. That to
Another
be
thing
observed is to be defeated.
Another thing I'm toying with that I don't know if John is. It's up to John, but like a thing that I toyed with is the idea that this was a young Gray along for the adventure that got almost abandoned, and so they don't. It's not like they weren't like a soldier on
They
this
couldn't
mission.
go out on their own necessarily. It's like a child or an infant trying to
Which
reach out
then
into the
gets-
void.
Right, and which then adds to the idea of them trying to get home, at least with all the information I gave you on the computer. So there was that aspect of it. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, the Drift Phantom. I think in the book, the Drift Phantom just exists. It does take on your ability or your perspective, different characters. It does change shape, which I love the idea of that.
It's
I think
cool.
It's a cool character.
Yep.
But
Very cool.
I kind of just embellished on that a little bit. And originally I had the Phantom kill the Gray. I was going to make you guys fight the Gray for a little bit, and then she does something, opens this portal, the Phantom comes out, swipes the Gray dead, and then you guys have to fight the Phantom. But I didn't like the way that turned out in the end, so I changed it on the fly. But
I think it was a good move.
Yeah.
It's always better, I think, for these kind of fights to up the challenge, right? To have both the Gray and the Drift Phantom.
and that Drift Phantom fight sucked. I think we
Yeah.
But that's because I forgot how DR works, and I didn't even mention it to you guys, and that's my bad.
But then Terme did that sweet cyclone, which
It
was
was
cool.
an accident. Oh yeah, it was a
right,
critical
it was a fail.
It was awesome.
that somehow worked in our favor.
Oh yeah, and then you had that bit where you were confused. Yeah, it was awesome.
You know, I was just going to take a half step back to talk about how the Phantom offing the Gray would have either subverted the Grays as the big bad of Threefold, like would have cheapened them as villains, or would have created the Phantom as like this superhuman,
Right.
outrageously powerful bad guy.
Well, and in the book, it says the Phantom exists because the goblins actually get into it. So the whole, like in the book, the goblins are just like junk seekers. The idea is that they are looking for technology. And so in the book, they get into Stellar Flare, and when they get in there, they trigger the security systems by starting up that drift drive. And that's what creates the Phantom and turns on the turret and blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of took that out of it and said that the Stellar Flare was sealed this entire time because the goblin or because the Gray had that control.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, one other thing about that fight was you guys ran away. All of you. You pulled a full Thaddeus.
Tactical
And-
retreat.
Yes,
And
a
I was like,
tactical retreat.
motherfuckers. Like,
Okay.
Okay, it made sense.
All run
story-wise.
away. It made perfect sense story wise. And I
we're
think
not-
tactically
yeah.
speaking, we identified a couple of better opportunities to engage with this Gray. That would have included like, okay, maybe we can flank it in the halls, maybe we can draw it out into like murder holes instead of
There was that darkness.
like finding it on its own terms.
Plus, it's like it's not our job to fight the Gray, and like from Thaddeus's perspective, the only reason we're fighting him is because Rolly refuses to give up this fucking puck, right?
Yep.
So then, like, it's like,
It's
like
Roller's
we
fault.
have a mission to do. We have everything
Yep.
we need. It is endangering the mission as well as our own lives to be fighting this Gray. There's no reason to do it. So he's just like, just give him the puck. He wouldn't do it. So then we're like, let's just get out of here. You know.
It was a great scene. I mean, that all fits, right? Like that motivation tracks.
Well, and I think that was the beginning of the narrative of this is not just a Rolu story.
No.
This puck is not his ransom for something purely selfish.
Right.
Well, yeah, we don't know that until later, according to Rolu, at least, right? So, yeah. Here,
We still
I
don't know
think
that
it's
as
selfish.
players
Yeah, exactly.
right now.
well, and this was one of the hardest things I had for this whole game was what does the puck actually do? And John he can't tell me. He won't tell
I
me.
can't. Yeah.
Because it still has implications in our main game.
Yeah, that can't be said, right?
And this is the wild part of we'll save in the Interstellar Tales from the Intergalactic Adventure Anthology. Thank you. Like there are
Adventure
questions
anthology.
from this adventure that still remain unanswered.
Yeah. Well, and this was a good turning point. So you guys killed the Gray. Tremaine tried to rise it from the dead with grave words again. F you and your grave words. I hate it.
Oh, it's so fun.
Classic.
Who doesn't want to talk to the dead?
Just a second thank you to Jason Keeley and his New York accent.
and then you guys killed the Drift
Incredible.
Phantom after we retconned that entire fight. That's when we got into that situation with Rolu. Rolu had the stone in his pocket, and he was actually paralyzed by the Drift Phantom. And just full transparency for the listener, we re-recorded that in the end because we had a huge debate on what it meant to actually take something out of somebody's pocket.
Yeah, so the lead up to that moment, the whole lead up, much like some other things that happened in the end, was not planned. What was planned, me not knowing what was going to happen, Kelly and I saying, is something going to happen now because everybody knows about the puck? And we talked about so many opportunities, all these possibilities. Are we prepared for PvP? What are we thinking is going to happen? And then Kelly just jumped in saying, I'm going to seize this moment. And then we start the next episode, this line in the sand.
Well, and I think we didn't really talk on it too much, but Kelly had secretly been telling me he wants to fight Rolu.
He told me that too.
He wants a battle with Rolu. He wants Thaddeus and Rolu to fight. And I was like, yes, let's do this. And I told Kelly, I was like, even in that episode, I was messaging him. I was like, if you're going to attack him now. If you're going to attack him now. Attack him now. Yeah. This is the time to attack him. I'm like messaging him this, and he doesn't attack him. And I was just like, son of a bitch.
Fuck. Like, he's just like messaging me these like, angry, like frustrated things. But like, it just didn't seem appropriate in that moment because, he was frozen. I could take it peacefully, or Thaddeus could take it peacefully. And Thaddeus, as much as like he does rage out every now and again, you have to remember that some of his inspiration is Shere Khan. Shere Khan is cunning, and it's only in those moments where he really loses.
He's also calculating.
He's calculating.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
exactly.
Like, it's not wise to
exactly.
kill Rolu without necessity. So be
why,
far more valuable as a prisoner.
Uses a lot of
Getting information on here's
tactics. In
Yeah,
running
tactically
away.
retreat.
tactics,
All the
Kevin.
time.
One day you'll see what I mean.
So that I mean, like that interaction with you guys all, I love that scene, but at the same time, I was like biting my own fingernails trying to figure out, like, I had an idea for what was supposed to happen, and you were not doing that at all. None of you. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
So then we were like,
then-
well, maybe we'll fight later. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and this is also an interesting turning point in the book because in the book it says the true warriors attack, and you have this moment that the whole scrap points thing exists in the book. I think I developed it a little bit more and tried to shift it some to get you. And because my goal was to draw you guys out of the lab and spread you out into the stellar flare for the combat. But in the book, it's written. Basically, you guys have scrap points, and you each roll a check to get so many scrap points, and you can set so many traps, and so many traps then basically take off, just kill each one as I come in. And
I remember
were,
that.
And what?
And your question was like, how much junk did you collect? And we were all like, none.
Right. And I remember distinctly throughout the game going like, this is scrap. And you guys like, okay.
Yeah. That is like when there's a new mechanic to a game that already has so many rules, I think you have to be upfront about it. And that's not on you. That's just like that doesn't happen often in adventures where they're like, hey, this is gonna matter, and I'm not gonna tell you how until later.
I don't think that's a part of the book even.
I feel like there's two different types of players. There's one type of player that will collect literally everything you can pick up. And the other type that's like, okay, I have a limited amount of inventory and I only want to pick up only the important things.
Exactly. Yeah.
All four of us ended up the latter.
Yeah. And I think the book doesn't actually have you collect them throughout the game because the scrap in this game, they introduced the Junkmancer, which is an amazing archetype, which apparently I learned this, thank you, Adam, that anybody can take an archetype, not just technomancers.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
So cool. Anybody can be a Junkermancer archetype. But so the junk you find throughout the game is actually supposed to be used for those spells, where the junk in the scrap point system is only from the rolls. But I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and like I wanted to with you guys because I know you didn't collect anything. So So then I also in the game you basically just like eliminate like there's 4 Yosokis. You only fight 3 based off of the number of traps you have. Like a trap kills everybody essentially.
Yep.
Like one trap kills one person, and then they all attack you within the lab. You're in the lab and you're attacked constantly. And I was like, no, I want to draw them out. I want to give you the full battlefield to play with, and that worked. I think you guys came out. I had the Yosokis all come in.
Way better.
Oh, thanks. I thought it was fun for you guys to like try to figure out which way they were going to go, and like I was able to
How
have
to funnel them, how to...
Yep.
Like
the whole hobo load. I loved the hobo load.
It was great.
Overlay.
It was great.
It was.
it was the difference between checkers and chess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then Dotrulu comes, and Dotrulu and Tez come in, and that fight was fucking phenomenal. It was so much fun. Again, thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, incredible.
He made that fight amazing.
I'm actually curious his reaction to your transition from drawing us out and making us fight in the battlefield to taking the fight into the Stellar Flare.
I forget exactly what I warned him with going into the match. I tried to give him just enough to play as Dotrulu, so I didn't give him a whole lot of backfeed. I didn't tell him like our entire story. I was just like, they're pirates. They're here to kill you, and so I think he didn't really have much of a perspective on that. I can't speak for Jason, but like I don't think he thought otherwise about the map usage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it.
He played it
So
well.
then he just
but-
rolled in.
He
Yeah.
just rolled in, but then the imagery of this giant character just like moving through the halls, ducking down a
Destroying
bit,
things.
Smashing things on his way,
stepping on people's heads and arms. Yeah, it was phenomenal.
his whole proposition was really creative too. He says like,
Loved
look,
it.
just
That was cool.
one of you up against me, and that's it. They take the whole thing and whatever, and then Terme, ballsy as he was like, I'll do it, guys. It was
I love that. I think I told
Awesome.
Vinny about that, but like Jason messaged me like privately, like, can I try something? And I was like, yeah, yeah, man, I trust you
Yeah,
fully
go for
with
it.
this.
Go
Do
for
whatever
it.
you want to do. And that's when he pulled it out and was like, let's do the duel. Which one do you
So
want to fight
good.
me? And I
So
was like, oh
good.
my god, this is so great. And him and I were messaging I was like, I still have the 2 Yosokis. When do you want me to attack? When do you want me to attack? And like we were like messaging privately that entire match. I had so much fun during those episodes. It was so good. Honestly, these last 3 episodes were so awesome. I had
really were.
so much fun. It made this entire this campaign so much fun.
Absolutely agree.
And then Vari 13 was dragged out because I was like, what am I going to... So again, Vari 13 is in the book. I don't know if I mentioned it to you guys. I told John offline. In the book, Vari 13 is still at Junker's Delight this entire book. They are never in the field with you.
Well, then.
And so at the end of the game, you go back to Junker's Delight and you're like, hey, this is what we found. But I was like, no, I want Vari to be there. I want Vari, and I put Vari outside so I can have that final vision when the True Warriors showed up. And I wanted you to know the True Warriors are outside.
Makes sense.
In the book, it says that Riddle actually messages you. You call Riddle and say, hey, we found stuff. And then Riddle goes, hey, but the True Warriors are coming. You got some time, but you should probably stay still.
Paizo, I just want
Okay.
to put this out there real quick. Like, if you need another writer, there's a guy called Kevin Decker, and I feel like you should reach out to him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, go-
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Vinny.
No, thanks.
How did we land on Home Alone?
We were just talking
We
about
were
setting
talking
up
about
traps.
setting traps
Terme.
inside
I don't-
of
that's-
our house, defending our castle.
It was
Right.
excellent. It was excellent.
That was just like one of those spur of the moment, like, yeah, of course.
So what-
Jack would
what-
start
what it
recounting
was-
Home Alone.
Was I had written the scene where the comms come in and Tez Tronin takes over the comms and tells you like, hey, we're coming in. I wrote that scene to interrupt the fight between Rolu and Thaddeus so that Rolu didn't die.
Oh, yeah.
But the fight never happened.
Rolu to die.
So
That would have fucked
that's
up the whole timeline. The whole time
Yeah.
we were like, please don't let Rolu die as we're planning all these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just say from the beginning, Kev would be like, well, like Rolo can't die, we can do this, and I would
you
just always
had
say,
you had a plan.
Yeah, he probably
Like-
had
like-
something up his sleeve. Yeah.
if he dies,
Okay.
he dies. If it happens, it happens.
I kept hearing that.
and
but
the
still.
Dotrulu fight being what it was, fucking phenomenal. It ended so cinematically. It left with Terme dead, well, dying, and then Chuck on Rolu's shoulder and Thaddeus there. And John and I had so many conversations about this scene. and I kept telling John, like, he has the secret seal gem that I gave him, so he can just lock you guys in the room and use the seal. You could lock himself in the room with you because he also has the portal, so he can use the portal thing. And then I was like, what if you lock the seal door? I was doing all this research about how easy it is to break down a door.
Yeah.
Turns out it's fucking impossible. If you would have locked that door, you guys would have been stuck in there for a century.
Oh my God, no.
Because it's the hardness is 20, and none of you guys hit harder than a 20, and so you guys would never hit any damage on it, and you didn't have a high enough engineering check to get out of there. So I was like trying to figure out ways to get you out of there, which you never ended up using. And I took into account, like, what if about acid damage? Apparently, acid damage in Starfighter doesn't do anything to a door. I was like, losing my mind. And then that doesn't even happen because the three of you turned on him.
Which, I have to say credit to Vinny and to Kev real quick, because up until then, I was like, all right, Rolu needs to get the stone. Chalk has it in his pants. I need to get it. I'm going to start making and negotiating, because I'm like, do I want to fight as a player? I don't know if if we really want to go to it, like we're okay with it, but like, do I want to do that? Because then I have to fight Testronin, and then I lock you in there, and then it's just me, and can I actually live? Because I have one resolve point. And then credit to Vinny and Kev, who were like, okay, but also what does Chalk want? And I was like, you're right. It makes sense that Rolu, if Rolu is going to move.
That's credit to just Vinny. Because
Okay,
all I ever said, I kept telling John over and over again, is your objective is to get out alive with the puck.
you kept being like,
whatever
get
you have to do. And I was like, just fucking kill Vinny. Like, kill Chuck.
Oh my God.
No, knock him out. Like,
And-
corner him, knock him out, take the puck and run. That's all you got to do.
And that's why I didn't lock the door, because I was like, all right, if this is going to be just Rolu, he's not a good person. If he, like, the only other like crew that he feels like he is like working with as like part of his family that he cares about, he's not a cob just in name only. He like actually cares about the crew. And suddenly out of nowhere, he's going to be like, hey, yo, I want that stone. Boom, punch you in the face and leave, and then like lock you in there. No, he's not going to do that. So then I'm like, all right, great. I need to get Shock on my side. Then once you were on my side, I asked you, I said, what do we do about them? I don't think they're going to follow us. And you were like, what do you mean? Like, I think it's fine. And that told me, all right, if I lock them in there right now, Shock's not going to be on my side. And then I'm going to have to fight Shock, and that's not going to work. So maybe we need to actually try and get Terme on our side. So that's why I didn't lock you in.
And it worked out.
And
so
it frustrated Kev.
beautifully.
And that was exactly our so to pull the curtain back even further, John and I had a conversation this morning about this exact moment. And
We didn't script it. I
we
just
didn't
asked
script
you.
it.
Like,
no,
yeah.
we very explicitly didn't script it.
I wondered if there
and
was
one of your questions was, hey, do you want to talk about what I'm actually going to do? And
which was
my
lock everyone in.
Right. My response was no, because I want to react in real time. But
And-
the lasting question was, what does Rolu want? Does Rolu want the stone, or does Rolu want Chak on his side? Does Rolu want the stone, or does Rolu want the rest of the crew on his side? Because this is not just, and we'll probably get to this in maybe 5 minutes. The Rolu getting the stone isn't just Rolu getting the stone. Rolu has a whole path to tread down after getting the stone from Chak.
But the crazy thing though is like story arc wise, from the very beginning of writing this story, it was, hey, this is a story of how Rolu got the stone and gave it to Hears. Like, that is the story. That's all the story is. Like, spoiler
Right.
alert. But you guys put so much more life into this, and you and Terme are such, like, Chalk and Terme were such wild cards in the scene that I had no idea where it was going to go. And I'm literally messaging John and Kelly, because I've been on these, just for the listener, I've been on these for at least a month about this epilogue and how we were going to do it. And I was like, I want you guys to have scripts. I want to know what you're going to say. I just want to know everything. And even the stuff that we finally got on paper, digital Word docs, was all thrown out the fucking window.
Okay.
The moment we got to this
Okay.
scene.
To
Which
be fair,
we all
before we
sort of-
started this episode,
Yeah.
I turned to you, Kevin, and said, hey, by the way,
This ain't gonna
I'm
work the way you
pretty
think
sure
it
we're
is."
going to have to throw all of this out.
Quickly became apparent that was the case today.
And
God.
to Will and Kelly, thank you so much. And and your work was phenomenal. Having to juggle
Absolutely.
2 different characters in one scene
Yep.
is fucking
Yep.
hard.
Yep.
And you guys
Absolutely.
did so well. And Will, your scene was completely blown apart when Chuck was like, "No, I'm not going back to the ship."
So
Improv.
I think we actually had to like pause. You were like,
yeah, you took a minute, you thought about it, you figured it out, and you roll with it. Like
so
everything that you hear once we lead the stellar flare, like just for the listener, that is like that's all one take. That's a continuous take. There's like a very slight like, oh, let me just think, like pause for like a small break, whatever. But it's all one take. We didn't talk about it. We had a bunch of other ideas. Yeah, well,
and it's like 80% unscripted.
Yeah, so
90%.
Kev gave us like sort of an outline of what he thought that would happen in our sort of and in that
13
1
episodes.
minute I basically scanned through it. I was like, nope.
Nope.
All right, let's do it.
Let's pick it up.
13 episodes.
That's it. It was amazing.
And the comment that I made after the episode still stands today. I am so thankful for this collection of individuals
Totally agree.
Same.
to go down
that-
this adventure on.
Because the ending, the moments, the goodbyes, the tension, the uncertainty, and then it came together in a way that it could only could with us, like just beautiful people, beautiful minds.
I was actually really nervous because I was like, man, those last 2 episodes with Otrulu were so intense. There was so much character. There was so much just like energy. How are we going to keep that up? And you guys fucking delivered. It was amazing.
Which, one of the things that we talked about very early on when I first joined the cast was how we tend to lean toward humor because that's what we're all good at. And so I want to take since I think we're doing this now, I want to take a particular moment to thank Kelly for like going with me on that really dramatic, like,
Oh yeah.
goodbye.
Which for the listener, I missed that because I went to pee.
You can listen to it.
Yeah, you can listen
Thanks,
to it, Kelly.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, following up with Vinny, like that as Kelly, the way that it was so hard for me to say no to Vinny, to say no to Shock. I was so tempted to just be like, yeah, it would be fun to go on an adventure and do something new and like whatever, but that it couldn't do it, Thaddeus. There's just no way to do it.
And also
Because,
knowing
like,
now that Thaddeus had this ulterior mission, sort of.
Since from the
kept
very
him.
beginning, I was like,
Yes.
Thaddeus was put here by one of the High Pirate Council members, the Commodore, and he, who is also the narrator of the beginning.
Who we
and
found
ending
out
of
at the very end.
the beginning and ending of our
Beautifully
our
played.
episodes. You hear, unknown treasures, that whole thing. That's him. But like, that's the guy whose ship was attacked by. Whose ship was like invaded by Hears and the crew and everything. So
Well, and John didn't know. Still, John doesn't know this. He just learned this today that this is a character in his campaign. So
there you go.
Yep. All right.
dropping bombs.
Great. Big thumbs up.
But yeah,
Will, you had said that you wanted to talk about the end. Did you just mean you just wanted to talk what we're talking about now?
Oh yeah.
Or was there something
The whole. I mean, do we want to say the thing that was on me and Vinny's mind as we did Rollo's epilogue? That's what I want to know.
Sure.
yeah. So let's get to that. So
much.
Yeah.
okay, so
Oh, yeah.
you guys left the Stellar Flare. We had the whole conversation with everybody outside. You guys walked all of them out. The biggest thing is, like, again, I scripted something with Kelly privately that I was like, man, when is this going to pop up? And it wasn't until after I got back from peeing and you girls like, hey, we had this big heart to heart that we were like, oh, this is the opportunity. And then it was like, well, the whole scene at the bar with drawing the gun and like, holy shit.
and the misfire and the
tension.
spell gem.
Oh
and
my
the-
God.
the diversion.
waiting for them to leave. Like this whole, like, we're all
Yes.
just looking at each other, knowing it's going to happen any second.
And
all completely unplanned. And as the GM that was
completely
trying to
unplanned.
orchestrate all this, I was like, John, when are you going to do your scene? When are we doing your scene? How are you going to get away? And then that happened, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, that was totally improvised on everyone's part. Like, it did not go at all how we planned.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then we cut to this beautiful thing with Thaddeus and the narrator that no one had any idea about, which was fucking incredible. It
was awesome.
And then we cut to Rolu and Chalk and Terme leaving.
Well, and so Rolu's script was written just for Rolu. The idea was he was going to leave the ship. And the original plan for Rolu was he was just going to dart out of there during the Dotrulu fight. He was talking about abandoning you guys that far back. And I was like, I kept telling John, like, no.
But I was like, as a player, that doesn't feel right. No, Kev, you wanted me to do it. You were like, go. And I was like, I don't want to leave you in the middle of this BBG. Like, as a player, that's just
That's
not
also
cool.
a dereliction of your duty, right?
Exactly. Like, yeah, and like Rolu does care about his crew. Like, he doesn't want to do that.
I guess so. That's really,
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I think I
Wow.
I know you
Okay,
care
wow.
about the,
Whoa.
I don't want to gloss over this. This is Thaddeus and Kelly telling Rolu that he's not a total piece of shit.
Still a piece of shit.
I know that
Probably,
you care
but-
about the crew of the Knave's Revenge, which is the ship with Hears and Sheer and all that, whatever.
But
and
not
the
the
Caduceus.
free captains.
And the Caduceus. This could be, unless because you plan things out way in advance, John. We're gonna find out something later that I don't know about.
Vinny,
But like, yeah.
What?
Which the last line where I say sell, or one of the last lines, I say sell all my paintings. I have more.
Okay, I'll talk
The
about
way
this. I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
that it sounded. You outside the ship with us in it, conveniently.
Yeah. So like this is what's happening like in the voice track. In the chat, Will and I are like, what the fuck is happening right now? Are we gonna like lose a kidney? Like what is are we just being sold to whomever? What is this ship going to self-destruct? Like there is very little. Chak believes Rolu is what happens.
And
so like
now
Chak
I
has
feel duped
rose-colored glasses. Like we're gonna go save the universe.
as a player, not as
Vinny
a character.
is like, oh no, I just got fucked by John.
I spent a lot of time in the past hour since that happened being like, what do I say? Do I comment on this? And
John even asked if he could re-record that, and we were all like, nope.
I was like, I have this thought. Maybe this is a
canon.
little better to convey. And you know what? I'm gonna put my game face on. Just like
As an observer, like I was just like listening to like they're just pulling up. It's a very beautiful, like like quiet-ish moment. Like Rolu's like meeting these new people. They're pulling into ship's pulling out, and then and then I just see in the chat, bing, 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 bing. It's just like Vinny and like Will being like,
Lighting up.
why do I get the sense that I'm about to be bamboozled? Where I'm about to get fucked. Oh my god, we shouldn't have trusted him. Like over and over and over. So they're just calm. It's just like they're panicking, slowly dying inside. And then that would be hilarious.
And then
Thaddeus would have been right the whole time.
And the truth is, we don't know. All we know now is that you guys are on the ship with him after he made that comment, and then he ends up dead trying to give the stone to Hears.
What happened in between? We don't know. And remains
what
to be
happened
seen,
to
maybe.
Shock and Terme.
This is the worst part for me as both a cast member and a player and an audience member. There are so many, and one of the things I look forward to this plot armor is we get all the questions answered. Everything's tied up with a neat little bow, and we still
Except that. Yeah.
don't know if we can trust John.
John is the outlier.
I'm deep in that threefold conspiracy, bro. I am living that life.
Threefold conspiracy.
I am
breaks the
about
fourth wall.
that life right now.
Yeah, no, it's throughout the entire extended universe of Will Save Now. My God.
Right.
Yeah.
And that final message that he records to your conspiracies.
That is.
Where
Is
else have you
that
heard that?
is that word for word what's in the threefold conspiracy? Right. Like the message that's left for Hears. I'm trying to remember.
Why is John
John's
smiling? F- you,
eating
John.
grin right
Son of
now.
a bitch.
I can't recall, but it sounded like it.
So so when I first started talking to John about this whole game, my thing was we ended the last episode of book 2 with the message from Rolu, I believe, right? And then we lead into it with a message from Hears to Rolu. And so I wanted to end this game with a message from Rolu back to Hears. And it was the message that he sent him. But now I'm questioning everything.
I've always questioned John from the very beginning, since he was GMing
that's true.
threefold, because you never know what he's up to.
Yeah, never know.
You never know.
You
But
never.
yes.
No, you'll find.
Well,
out
that
one
is
day.
all
So-
of Junker's Delight for you. I'm sorry it took a whole 40 episodes longer than it should have.
Wow.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the 4 of you guys for playing. Seriously, I know I whined and bitched and moaned so much, but I don't hate GMing nearly as much as I say I do. It is overwhelming, but I might try again in 10 years when my kids are old enough to.
You need to go on
are
a long
excellent at it.
vacation from jamming until you get that itch.
Until you get the itch. Yeah, you're fantastic at
It's
it.
okay. You
But I
can-
am super excited to hop back into the role of Rick 19 or Rick.
Oh,
Rick
I
19
can't
is his
wait
name.
to cast Rick
Yes, I
19.
can't wait to see what Dr. OK is into next.
I'm ready.
So
I've
Thank
forgotten
you.
how to do a Scottish accent.
you got
Irish
some,
accent. Yeah,
you got a week to figure it out.
And
Thank you to our
next.
listeners.
It's coming
Thank you to Jason Keeley for joining us, for writing this, for just supporting it. Thank you to all of
Jason.
our fans. Thank you to the paralegals. Thank you to Adam and Jeremy. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks,
I love you all.
Leslie. Thanks, Taco Monk. I don't know. You guys know who you are on
Finder.
Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crowd.
You all are
Absolutely.
fantastic. Stay tuned for
more.
next.
Yep.
For more.
For John shit.
John's
God.
bullshit. And
God.
who knows? Maybe there will be something to see pretty soon.
See you next time, Scallywag.
Something to see. Ooh.
Time.
Amazing.
Drift beacons and distant stars.
Drift beacons and distant stars, y'all.
Distant stars.